Right, good morning, everyone. Can I welcome you to our Development Committee this morning? I'm Councillor Filmer, I'm Chairman of the Development Committee. Just a few housekeeping notes just so that you know what's going on today. The meeting that we're holding today is a hybrid meeting in that we're obviously present here at the canal side, but we're also online. So we have people both in the room and we also have members of the public. We have officers and members who are online joining us remotely through the Teams system. I should highlight, though, that only members who are in the room itself are able to vote on applications before us today. You have to be physically present in order to make the decisions. Could I ask that all people who are present, both online and with us here today, make sure if you've got mobile phones, can you make sure they're turned off or at least turned to silent? Otherwise, it may well interfere with the meeting and also the IT system if we're not careful. A couple of housekeeping notes, as I say, for the room itself. I've not been told that there's any planned fire drill here today, so if the alarms go off, they are real and you need to exit through the fire doors at the rear of the room and over to the side. If you require toilet facilities during the meeting, they're through the central doors at the back and through towards the cafe. There are water, there is water and glasses over on the side of the room if anyone needs to have a drink. And again, just a reminder, as we're in a building, it's a non-smoking area, so unfortunately, if you need to have a cigarette, please make sure you've left the building before you light up. So you know who's in front of you today or online. To my right are officers from our Democratic Services and our legal section. To my left are officers from our Planning and Economic Development sections. And on the wings of the table are the members who will ultimately be debating and deciding the applications before us. The format of the meeting that will follow today will be as per the agenda that's been circulated, and for those of us who are joining online, they can view the actual application details online, but it will also be transmitted through the meeting. We'll take each application in turn, and we'll have a presentation from the officers. We'll then have the speakers, and we will deal with it in that normal format. Right, so if we move to the agenda itself today, do we have any apologies for absence, please?
Yes, Chairman. Apologies, Councillor Liz Parry.
Are there any other apologies that we want to give? No. Okay. Item 2 on the agenda is urgent business. I've not been advised of any business that isn't already covered on our agenda today. Public speaking time for members of the public. For those of you who've registered, will, as I mentioned, take the applications in turn. The officers will give their presentation of the background and detail of the application and will then invite you to address the committee. As I say, some members of the public and members of the council are present and will therefore do that in the room. Some are online, so we'll call them to do that online for those that are not with us in person. Just to remind you that you have 3 minutes to make your presentation to the members. Again, for those of you in the room, you'll see there's a timer on the front of the table that counts the time down, so you can see how much time you've got left to go. And obviously, it will, if you can draw your comments to a conclusion before it goes off, that would be most appreciated. Item 4 is declarations of interest. Are there any declarations from members? I'll just do a general one for all members who are members of the Drainage Board. We make sure that members don't get involved at 2 levels, so members of the Drainage Boards have not taken part in any of the comments that have been made by the Drainage Board, so they are free to be involved at this meeting. If that's not the case for any members of the Drainage Board, please let us know and we'll obviously deal with that. So any declarations that we need to have from members, starting with Councillor Facey. Can someone pass Councillor Facey a microphone?
Thank you, Chairman. It's just a matter of clarity, Chairman. 36 Burnham Road High Bridge. Because we've already discussed that, with me being a member of Burnham and High Bridge Town Council, do I need to declare an interest? Because we've already discussed this item once.
Yeah.
I'll just give an advice because in my view, Councillor Facey, if you've discussed it, because there's a deferral, if you've gone away and discussed it, you're still privy to additional arguments, and the agreement must be come to the committee with a fresh mind. So I've already discussed this with one of the other councillors, and I've said that you're not to discuss it outside because it's a deferral. So it may be that you err on the side of caution and say that you could possibly be predetermined if you've discussed it.
So I think, Councillor Facey, if you've had discussions about this application before this meeting that you've expressed views, then you're potentially predetermined. If you're in your normal situation where you've taken no part in any discussions, just declare that, and therefore you can remain part. Exactly. So what's in committee is fine. It's if it's external to the committee is what you're trying to avoid. So you're still okay. So you're just doing a non-predetermination declaration that you haven't been involved in discussions at the town and parish level. Okay. No worries. Councillor Murphy. Again, Councillor Bolt, could you pass the microphone up your side of the table?
Thank you. Yeah, I had a discussion with Dawn this morning about some words I had with a member of the town council who confirmed to me that they did not discuss anything at all. And so I am in the same position as Councillor Facey, I'm a member of the town council, but I have not taken part in any discussions. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other declaration from members? I need to make a declaration in terms of the application that's coming up on page 85. The application is within my ward. I have not, though, taken any part in the discussions at the town in this case, parish council level. So therefore, I've not predetermined this application. If there are no other declarations for members of the public, just for you to understand where the declarations you've just heard, we have a standing order within this committee which basically says that you can either be involved at the decision-making level at the town and parish level, or you can be involved at the district level. The reason is so that if you've been involved and made a decision at the town and parish level, it might be perceived by the public that you've already made your mind up on that application. You therefore couldn't come with an open mind to the meeting, and that's why we've taken that precautionary approach. Where you've heard members today declare they've taken no part at that town and parish level, that's why they've done it and why they're able to then be part of the debate and part of the decision today. Right, if we move on then from the declarations, which takes us on to the planning applications themselves, we're going to start, members, on page 36, I believe it is, with the West Huntsville application. It's a major application where we have speakers present. So if I could pass to Mrs. DeBreeze, and you're going to introduce this one for us, please.
Thank you. So the application is before committee as there's an objection from West Huntsville and Huntsville Parish Council raising concerns regarding overdevelopment, conflict with emerging national policy and design guidance, concerns regarding the sustainability of the site, biodiversity net gains, highway safety, flood risk, housing needs, and concerns regarding the public consultation. So the main considerations for the application is principal development, size, scale and design, impact on heritage assets, impact on adjoining properties, highway considerations, ecology, flood risk and drainage, climate change and sustainability, and qualities. So this slide shows the site outlined in red. It lies to the south of the existing primary school on New Road, to the north of Main Road, with New Road to the north and Main Road to the west. The site is located outside of, but adjoining the settlement boundary for West Huntsville, which it adjoins on the north and west boundaries, and it is seeking consent for exceptional release through policy T3A of the local plan. So it's an outline application for up to 45 dwellings. So this shows Google Maps image of the site, which is square and level and clearly defined with hedged boundaries. There's also land drains surrounding the site and a bus stop on Main Road and a mile marker to the south of the existing bus stop, which is currently in the existing hedgerow. So the next couple of slides show the site. So the first image is from within the site looking northwest, with the existing screening to the boundary and the properties on the opposite side of New Road visible through the hedge. The second image is a view through the site looking to the west, and you can see the elevation of Sundowner, which lies on the opposite side of Main Road. So these are views southwest and south from within the site, showing the level nature of the land and again the established hedge boundaries to the site. And the top image is a view to the southeast of the west boundary and a view from within the site towards the west boundary with the existing field gate, which currently provides access for this land parcel. So this slide shows a view of the existing parking along New Road, looking west and then east, and the surrounding parking restrictions due to the location of the adjoining school. And these photos show a view to the left, looking south along the main road and a view looking north. The proposed access and milestone is located to the south of the existing bus stop, which members can just see in the second photo. And I'll come on to these a little bit later, but members will note that the mile marker isn't readily visible in these photos. So as previously mentioned, the application is in outline and was supported with this illustrative layout. The only detailed matter for consideration is the access. This indicates there's a play space and a car park along the northern boundary. There's a pedestrian link into New Road at the top hand corner of the site and maintained green boundaries and enhanced wildlife corridor along the southern boundary. In principle and in accordance with policy T3A and S2 of the local plan, this site's looking to meet an identified local housing need for affordable housing, which was identified as part of a housing needs assessment for West Huntsville. In October 2019, the West Huntsville Housing Needs Assessment was produced and published, although this was subsequently updated in September 2020. And whilst the Parish Council have raised concern regarding the update, the Affordable Housing team have confirmed that the update was undertaken following a robust methodology and resulted in a housing affordable need for 18 households. So Parish Council raised concern regarding overdevelopment, particularly given the major development consented within the locality of this site. Predominantly these fall outside of West Huntsville, with the exception of Brew Farm, which did not, for viability reasons, provide affordable housing within this parish. And similarly, 92 Main Road does not provide any affordable housing on site, although a contribution towards affordable housing is being taken. This development seeks consent for up to 45 dwellings, so it does allow for scope for reduction in future applications if there were concern with density and scale, although the number currently proposed would deliver the 40% affordable housing as required by policy T3A against the existing housing need. So given that this is an outline application, a shorter time frame is also being proposed within the conditions to enable early delivery of the site. The detail of affordable housing would be secured by legal agreement to ensure that it meets the identified need as specified within the housing needs assessment. So this is a design principles plan and reflects the illustrative master plan with the green edges, public open space in the centre of the site, and the pink area indicates the car park that would be taken on by the school and a local area of play to the side. The location, provision and detail of the public open space would all be set through a Section 106 agreement and conditions, so just to ensure that future applications would comply with policy D34. Concern was raised that the development of the site would be out of keeping with the form and character of the surrounding area. Whilst the detail of this is not set as part of this application, as it's an outline application, the ringstone development to the south of this site, which is shown in the bottom hand corner, does show a similar development pattern, and as such officers are raising no objection to the principle, although detailed consideration would be given to the layout, landscaping and wider impact as part of further applications in the event of support. The application was supported with landscape and visual impact assessment, which considered views of this site to be intermittent and could be mitigated through landscape boundaries, minimising impact of views outside of the surrounding area. And the scale of the development is indicated as 2-storey with green buffers around the edge. So officers are raising no objection in principle. Policy T3A, this is the criteria for the policy, which is also set out in the report, but for reasons set out in the previous slide, there's no objection in principle to the development of this land. Parish Council have raised concern in terms of design quality and lack of reference to the recent MPPF changes, but as an outline application, the detailed design of the development would be subject to further applications and additional supporting information would be required at that stage. The connectivity I will cover as part of the highway considerations. The siting of the affordable housing would be secured through the legal agreement and set as part of future applications. Economic Development team have also recommended a condition requiring local labour agreement, and due to the position of the site relative to the primary school, the developer also sets out the position of wider support for employment as a result of the development at this site. There are a number of highway improvements proposed as part of the application, and the illustrative plan and the design principles plan set out green buffers to the boundaries. The creation of the access in the location proposed would also result in the opening up of the surrounding area surrounding the mile marker. So this is a photo of the existing mile marker, which is currently located within the hedge on the western boundary of the site. It was not readily visible at the time that I carried out my site visit. The bus stop is shown on the section adjoining the photo and shows the location of the access point. The milestone marker would remain on an area of green adjoining and to the south of the main access and would fall within the visibility splay. So that would result in the surrounding land around the mile marker being cleared to ensure visibility, increasing the prominence of this heritage asset. In terms of heritage impact, the development is not looking to move or relocate the marker, although the development would result in a change to its setting. Historically, mile markers would form a navigational point on the highway, and whilst the proposal would result in the access within close proximity to the mile marker, this would result in the opening up of the area surrounding the marker, increasing its visibility and therefore prominence of the heritage asset within the locality. Additional information was also submitted during the application to set out the primary setting of mile markers, naturally being within close proximity to highways, which over time would have been increased in width with footpaths and bus stops added. So it's not considered that it's going to be adverse impact on the relationship of the milestone with its key connection, which is the link to the highway. As such, the proposal was considered to be acceptable in accordance with policy D26. So turning to impact on neighbours, there are residential properties adjoining the site to the north and west, with agricultural land to the east and south, and the school immediately to the north. The layout plans are only indicative because the details set as part of future applications, but it does show landscape boundaries retained and a landscape buffer. The car park and play area would increase separation between the proposed development and the school, and the dwellings to the east orientated to New Road but show a good degree of separation. Properties are also shown fronting Main Road, although due to the orientation of Sundowner and the intervening highway, there's not considered to be any undue impact. The detailed layout and design would be subject to further applications, but there's no constraints that would suggest that the development would give rise to any undue impact. The application was supported with a transport assessment, which was subject to consultation with County Highways and Highways England, or National Highways as they're now known. National Highways commented on traffic generation and carried out further analysis work to consider any impact on the strategic network. The development was considered to give rise to one vehicle trip westbound on the A38 during a critical AM peak, and one vehicle trip westbound on the PM peak. So based on the scale of the impact, National Highways raised no objection to the proposal. The plan shows a vehicular access into the site, a pedestrian access onto New Road, tactile crossings in 2 locations on New Road, across the access to the site and to the north to enable a crossing of the main road to access the bus stop that's further north of the access. A travel plan was also submitted with the application and would be secured through section 106. A number of conditions were also recommended by County Highways, and they have been imposed at the end of the report. In terms of scale, as a tier 3 settlement, there are limited local facilities in the village, but it is close to Burnham and Highbridge to the north, and with the improvements provided, it's considered that it provides good opportunities for connection through public transport. Visibility displays and tracking plans were submitted, demonstrating the safety of the proposed improvements, and detailed negotiation has been undertaken with County Highways to ensure acceptable highway safety. So as a result, County Highways have recommended a number of conditions that were imposed at the end of the report. In terms of impact on ecology, the application was supported with an ecological impact assessment, which concluded no residual negative effect on designated sites of nature conservation importance and no likely significant effects on European designated sites. Landscape proposals are intended to result in the creation of habitat of ecological value, which would mitigate habitat loss associated with the site clearance and result in a positive effect on biodiversity. There are a number of conditions recommended as part of the report. There's an ecological construction management plan, landscape environment management plan, lighting condition, licenses for newts and badgers, limitation on timing for site clearance, and additional mitigation in terms of bird and bat boxes. They're all covered by conditions at the end of the report. The site's located in flood zone 3 and therefore needs to meet the sequential and exceptions test in accordance with policy D1 of the local plan. So West Huntsville is all within the same flood zone, and given that this site is looking to meet an identified local need for this particular parish, there's no other alternative sites at a lower flood risk that can meet this need. The sequential test is therefore met for the site. In terms of exceptions, the Environment Agency were consulted on the application and raised no objections, subject to finished floor levels being set elevated from the ground level and specifying that all development should be 2-storey, which is as indicated on the submitted plans, but also proposed to be conditioned at the end of the report. The application was supported with a drainage information that confirmed that the site from a desk-based appraisal was unlikely to be acceptable for infiltration drainage. That in principle was agreed by the lead local flood authority, although a drainage condition is imposed to ensure that appropriate information is submitted as part of future applications. The application was submitted with a sustainability statement, which highlighted all of the above measures to increase the sustainability of the site during construction and for future occupation of the dwellings. Given the outline nature of the application, none of these measures are specifically committed, so there is a condition that's recommended to ensure details of these are pulled through into future applications, and consideration is given to incorporating renewables in the construction of any future reserve matters. Under the Equalities Act, due regard is given to the potential impacts on equality and those with protected characteristics. As a residential development, the application will provide a number of affordable and market housing which could be accessed by the wider public, some of which may have protected characteristics. The design detail of the proposal would give consideration to the layout, density and accessibility of these units, and therefore the impact of this. There's no indication or evidence as part of the outline application that different groups have or would have different needs or experiences, issues and priorities in relation to this proposed development. So overall, it's not considered that the approval of this application would give rise to any adverse impact on different groups or result in any implications for the Equalities Act. So in conclusion, the application is an outline application adjoining the settlement of West Huntsville and seeking to meet an identified local housing need. In principle, the site is considered to be acceptable by officers. Looking at the constraints of the site, there is no concern raised with the indicative layout, but this would be established through future applications. In terms of heritage assets, there is the mile marker on the hedge line, which is in close proximity to the access, but it would result in the opening up of this heritage asset and therefore increased prominence within the surrounding area. Looking at the adjoining properties, there's no constraints that would suggest that there couldn't be an appropriate scheme designed as part of future applications, but again, the detail of that would be set through future applications. County Highways have considered all the information submitted and are satisfied with the details and the improvements proposed and have recommended a number of conditions. and National Highways have not concluded that there'd be any adverse impact on the strategic road network. In terms of ecology, there are a number of conditions to ensure biodiversity enhancement on site, and flood risk drainage and sustainability is also conditioned. So the recommendation to members is conditional approval. Thank you very much.
Members, as you'll see, we've got a number of speakers on this application. The first speaker, if I could call for, I believe, is going to be Vivian Evans. If you'd like to come forward to the speaker's table. Again, just to remind you, you've got the 3 minutes. You'll see that time on the clock. Start when you're ready, and the mic should be live. So, but you might need to hold it quite close to you to, if you give it a try, just see how it works.
Good morning.
Can everyone hear? Yeah, that's fine. Terrific. Start when you're ready.
I have lived in the village for the majority of my life, and I live in 5 New Road, and this development is totally out of keeping with the surroundings. I would like to say that we feel our democratic rights have been eroded by COVID restrictions. The majority of residents did not receive a consultation letter or any communication and are unaware of the development. However, 65 plus letters were submitted to the planning department.
Could I just ask you to pause for 1 moment? If you can speak a little bit louder, and 1 or 2 of the members are indicating that they're struggling a little bit to hear. Sorry, but we will allow you extra time, don't worry, so please start.
We are afraid of flooding since climate change will increase the risk, and we are in a flood zone 3 area with, I quote, a high probability of river and sea flooding. During the last flood, the seaweed stopped at my front door and a river appeared in the field behind me. We are afraid that we will not be able to get house insurance and the premium will cost a lot more. We are concerned about the increase in traffic. Cars frequently queue now through West Huntsville to get through Highbridge, so much so that rat runs are developing. We are concerned about the safety of our children who will have to experience more pollution from traffic as they walk to and from school. We agree with SCC Highways submission on the 12th of March, especially the comment about 3 uncontrolled crossings with potential conflict between people and traffic. The proposed school car park is totally inadequate for the number of cars used. We agree that provision must be made for younger villagers to be able to live here, but cannot agree with the supposed housing need quantified. We dispute these figures. There are no safeguards for the provision of these houses going to local people. The developers have not provided improved access to local jobs as they should under Tier 3 development. The developers have failed to provide amenities to the community for future community should the development proceed. For example, doctor surgery, dentist shops, post office, and a new access to job opportunities. The environmental and ecological impact on biodiversity will be irreversible. The developer surveys clearly identify a number of species, and these will all be affected. There are no green standards for the development, so we're not in keeping with the government's intention of reducing carbon emissions by 80%. The developers have not met the National Planning Framework, MPPF 163A, and LDA must show it will provide wider sustainability benefits to the community that outweigh flood risks. Finally, there has been no consultation by Walsingham with us as claimed. Outline planning application was only received by the Parish Council on the 14th of January 2021, which has allowed the public just 1 Parish Council meeting on the 8th of February to discuss it. They have not worked closely with residents, paragraph 28 of MPPF, and finally, Sedgemoor local policy for Tier 3 housing has not been adhered to as a meaningful and robust engagement with the local community and other stakeholders has not taken place.
Thank you very much.
Ask councillors here and there, have they read our letters that we submitted?
I'm sorry, I can't allow you to carry on. You've had the 3 minutes that you're permitted, but thank you. Our next speaker is John Wakefield, who I believe is representing the Parish Council today. Is that correct, John?
Thank you, Chairman.
No problem. Start when you're ready, and again, you'll see the time.
The current proposal is something of a cultured shock to the villages of West Huntsville and Alstone. The last building on this sort of scale was in the 1940s, 80 years ago, which is the Ringstone Estate. Since then, there's been a steady increase in building with over 70 new builds. going on during that period, but they've all been within the confines of the village in the loop of Church Road and Alstone Lane. They're all done a couple at a time to give the time for the village to adopt them and for them to become part of the village. This is totally different. Not only it will create an enclave which is separate from the village, and would be very difficult to for the people living there to amalgamate within the village and for it to become part of the village, being so many houses. In 2016, we produced a parish plan. This, we believe, has been largely overlooked. The response was very good from this, and it included the housing need for the villages. 61% said they didn't want any more building at all. Of those that did, there were 10 households which required houses, affordable housing within the village. When this development first came about, the original H&A in October was 10. It suddenly got put up to 18 by this light touch H&A, and the very name itself suggests it's less than H&A than a full formal one. And it's taken as a maximum possible, maximum 40% and maximum of 18 houses, which we would dispute. Moving on, I'm getting a bit short of time. The car park, under a tier 3, must contribute to a priority local infrastructure and services. The school car park does not do this. In the real world, ladies who are dropping, mainly ladies who are dropping their children off here, will probably carry on to Killalf to drop older ones off. They are not going to drive through this whole estate for a small car. It's only 16 places, and then fight their way out through where there's no crossing in New Road. It's not going to be used. It will not give any benefit to the local community whatsoever. They will simply carry on parking as you've seen on the photographs as they do at the moment. So for that, even if you ignore the rest of it, for that reason alone, this is against the policy of a tier 3 settlement. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Right, our third speaker is Jonathan Chick, agent, who I believe is joining us through Teams. Mr. Chick, could you just confirm that we can hear you?
Hi there, can you hear me?
I'm not hearing anything at the moment, Mr. Chick. Is your microphone enabled?
I can hear it through Teams.
Are we able to get it through the speakers?
Good morning, can you hear me?
Mr. Chick, can you try again?
Good morning, can you hear me?
Still no. Can you just bear with us for one moment? We'll just sort out some technical issues on site.
Sure.
Right, Mr. Chick, would you like to try again, and we'll see if we can hear you this end?
Hi there, can you hear me now?
No, we're still not getting you just yet.
Still not getting it.
But okay, so we're hearing you through Teams, but not. Oh. Okay. Right, Mr. Chick, could you try again and we'll see if we can pick you up on the microphone this time.
Good morning. Can you hear me? Hello, 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 hello. Can you hear me okay now?
Again, Mr. Chick. Again, Mr. Chick.
How about now? Good morning.
Again, sorry, Mr. Chick, if you could try and use your microphone and we'll see if we can hear you.
Good morning. Can you hear me now?
Yes. Yeah, I think we can, but we just need to watch the volume here because I think it's quite quiet. So try again.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. Can we just check if all members got their microphones turned off at the moment? Because apparently we're getting some feedback through Teams, although we can't hear it. So, Stuart, do you want to try? Because I think you might be able to get back through as well, can.
Hi, Mr. Chick. Hopefully you can hear me. Could you start, please?
Hi, Stuart. I can hear you. Does this sound okay?
We still can't hear you, I'm afraid, Jonathan. Just bear with us, everyone. A few technical issues our side.
Yep.
Hi, Mr. Chick. I'm going to ask you to start, but I want you to give it 5 seconds before you do, just because we need to turn some mics off first. So if you could sort of count yourself to 5 and then start, we'll let you know if that works. Okay.
Hi, Stuart. I'll try again. Does that work okay?
That seems to work. Just bear with us a minute. We're just going to turn the volume up, okay? If you wouldn't mind, sorry, counting in again at 5.
How about now?
That seems to work. So again, if you can count yourself into 5, I'll mute and that we go. We'll stop you if it's not. So if you don't hear anything, you're good to go. Okay, thanks for this and apologies to everyone for the technical issues.
Okay, thank you, Stuart. Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Jonathan Chick from Housekeeping Planning, and I'm the agent representing Land Value Alliances in respect to this application. Firstly, I'd like to apologise for not being there in person, as I had a prior appointment, so find myself in Cheshire. The application has been confirmed as being policy compliant and is presented to you today with a recommendation of approval. Importantly, it will deliver the 18 affordable homes needed in the parish area for local people and has the full support of the Council's affordable housing team. As set out in the Case Officer's Committee report, our client has accepted a planning condition which requires the submission of reserved matters applications within 18 months of the outline decision, rather than the normal 3 years, which will speed up the delivery of the homes. Indeed, Land Value Alliances already have a developer lined up who will be able to deliver the affordable homes to quickly meet the current need in the area. Prior to submission, the scheme has been subject to pre-application discussions with Sedgemoor and the Parish Council and public consultation with local residents in the form of a leaflet dropout, which generated valuable feedback. We note the concerns raised by the Parish Council and local residents, but these are all matters which have been addressed in the committee report and through the course of the application. In particular, technical matters such as highways, drainage, ecology and sustainability have all been considered in detailed discussions with consultees during the process, and as a result there are no objections. In terms of the point about other developments already coming forward in the area, as set out in the Case Officer's report, the affordable housing need is current need and does not relate to previous developments delivered in the area or schemes outside the parish area. Indeed, the Brew Farm scheme referred to in various comments relates to strategic needs for the district and notably included no affordable housing. The application will also deliver a number of benefits, including a new staff car park for the primary school, which will help improve the parking situation and road safety along New Road. The school car park will be easily accessible as a staff car park, and further detail on the final design will be secured at reserved matter stage. The scheme has also been discussed with the Priory Learning Trust, who run the school, and has their full support. Other benefits include new pedestrian crossings across both the A38 and New Road, and a new play area which pupils of the school will be able to use. These are all benefits which are identified as needs in the West Huntsville and Owlstone Parish Plan.
I'm sorry, Jonathan, I'm going to call time on you there. That's the 3 minutes. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. We did hear you there.
Thank you very much.
Very much. Right, members, that concludes the speakers that we have on this application. Are there any comments or questions from members? Yeah, Councillor Hendry. Again,
You hear me? You hear me?
Yeah.
Quite a few things. 18 affordable homes is actually a good thing. They're in dire need for them all over the place, so there's nothing wrong with that. The A38 main road access is actually acceptable, given that it is a main road. If it was on the side road by the school, then obviously it'd be a huge problem, but it's not. It's onto the main road. The street view for these new houses, I think, will actually be really good coming down that road. It adds to the ambience of West Huntsville itself. Housing stock is always a good thing, especially in places like this. It could do with it just to make the village more acceptable, more accommodation. It builds the places up, it brings new families in there. The Ringstone Estate is just up the road. It's been there for some time, and in some kind of an abstract way, it's a follow-on from the Ringstone Estate, albeit just down the road. And these villages should be allowed to expand. The school gets a twofold benefit from this. The new homes will no doubt supply families with children to come in there because the school is just across the road. Therefore, that allows the school to expand a little bit more, which is not a bad thing either. The trees around the boundary will establish themselves in time. Statutory consultees all seem to be on board with this. There's a few little hiccups, a few There are bits and pieces, but not anything of any major. Ecology is good. Newts and badgers have been taken care of. Tier 3 settlement, that seems to be met with the requirements, and the school car park for staff. Generally speaking, at this moment, I don't actually have a problem with this. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Councillor Betty.
Thank you, Chairman. One quick question is, or I've got a few, is the school car park, one of them, our speakers today said that the parking is for parents, and the agent was saying it's a staff car park. Just clarity on that point, please. And also, are we expecting there to be a crossing on New Road to the school, or are they just going to walk straight across the road? Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. DeVries.
So the car park, the Priory Learning Trust have been in discussions with the developer and agreed to take it on, so they would be responsible for its ongoing management and maintenance. If they want to use it for staff, they would be able to. Currently, staff would be limited to the existing surrounding on-street parking, which includes New Road. So in officers' opinion, it would take cars off of New Road and take it away from the existing congestion. I would probably agree with the speakers that in terms of school pickup drop-off, it's likely parents would still be driving to New Road, parking their car and temporarily picking up children, but there will be provision for 16 additional car parking spaces as part of the development. In terms of the improvements, I can't get the indicator on the screen. Members will see there's sort of orange, yellow sort of sections. So there's one across the entrance to the site. So there's dropped tactile crossings at the entrance to the site. And then when you go into New Road, where it bends around, there's a little grey section there. That's a pedestrian cut through from this site to New Road. And then again, there's two yellow areas. So there's a tactile crossing at the top of the junction and a tactile crossing slightly further down from the crossing. So there's two crossings on New Road. All of those have been checked by Highway Safety in terms of forward visibility for drivers and pedestrians. And the school, I know, have a lollipop lady that effectively crosses the children and stuff at peak times. The other improvement you can see on the next sort of the top hand corner slide is another set of tactile crossings, which is right at the top of this slide. So it crosses Main Road to get to the bus stop on the opposite side of the road. So there's 4 tactile crossing spaces provided as part of the development as a whole.
Okay. Councillor Murphy.
Thank you. It seems quite difficult to speak about anything on this because you've covered so many different aspects of it. I congratulate you on that. I am slightly concerned about this because the A38 concerns me constantly. I mean, we have further along that road. You may remember I complained bitterly about the fact you were positioning a primary school right on the A38. And that has continued and has been confirmed as going ahead. And this road is turning out to be one of the most difficult roads in the county, mainly because of the vulnerability of the M5. The M5 is constantly breaking down in terms of having traffic accidents, and this is the default, the only default road to go through, and is constantly a wall-to-wall, I mean, what do you call it, bumper-to-bumper, not wall-to-wall, bumper-to-bumper scene for everybody coming along this road. It's quite difficult, and I'm very surprised that you have allowed this slightly enlarged development with only the one access through to the A38, I think, is, if I'm right in thinking, and so that everybody has to come in through that road, and there will be traffic problems and congestion problems for them to cope with. So personally, I am diametrically opposed to any large development, or this is a medium development, but in terms of West Huntsville, it's a large development. They're quite right in what they said. It's quite a large development. I'm really surprised that you've allowed it right along the road, right next to the road. I would have thought that this should be further inland, away from the road, so that it becomes something that's independent and have an independent access to New Road, for example. Is it New Road? Is it New Road? I am also disturbed about the fact that you are having traffic drive every morning and every night through and disturb the people, the peace of these people. This is not a peaceful development. It's a development that, I mean, people who will be getting houses on this development are walking straight into a problem, that they've got traffic which has a right to come through their so-called peaceful development. I've had it described as a peaceful development, as an advantage and so on. I don't think it's an advantage at all. I think it's in the wrong position. I think it's, in some respects, you could say it's overbearing to the village. One of the comments that one of the speakers made was that this is a mainly single and small housing development. Mainly, if you drive along this road, you see lots of single houses tucked away nicely as part of a ribbon development, really. This is a ribbon development village, not where you clump large amounts like this. And personally, I will be voting against this because I think this is in the wrong place. You could say it's overbearing to the road. It's something that we talk about being overbearing. It usually means the size of a building, whatever. It's hardly overbearing in terms of its size, but I just think in terms of a large development like this, it's in the wrong place. It's misplaced. As someone asked about, I think it's the previous speaker, asked about crossings, and I don't think you gave a satisfactory answer, Dawn. I think there needs to be a crossing there, some sort of crossing or some sort of thing, but then it's too near to the road. The traffic, and one of the speakers talked about a rat run. Well, I can tell you, I personally have conditioned myself to either turn off at this turning or at the previous one. I think there's one at Crossways, getting through to East Huntsville, and then turning left at East Huntsville and going straight through, is it Basin Bridge? Not Basin Bridge, is it? Getting right through, coming up towards the red cow, is it? Not the red cow, the cider place and all that kind of area. You can get back into Burnham that way quite easily. You can go into either beyond the roundabout or in front of the roundabout. It's so much easier, but it's becoming really congested, and it's promoting people to go, get out of this road, because it's a nightmare. So I have to say, in general terms, and I realize this is perhaps not something, I'll have to speak shortly because I'm taking too much time, but I think this development is in the wrong place. I don't think I can say much else.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for allowing me to speak so long.
Mr. Fries, there were a couple of questions particularly relating to the highways impact and the A38.
Yeah. So the application did come in with a large amount of supporting information and was subject to quite intense negotiation with County Highways in terms of what improvements were required, what improvements were necessary, and then making sure that the improvements were safe. All of which County Highways were satisfied with at the end. They did briefly consider a more formalised crossing of the main A road, but it was demonstrated that that wasn't necessary with the supporting information that was submitted. So the tactile crossing that we've got was demonstrated as sufficient by County Highways and safe in terms of the onward visibility. But it is, it has all been subject to safety audit, it has all been assessed, and that is the recommendation of the County Highways team, which is why there's recommended conditions at the back end of the report.
Thank you. Got Councillor Bolt next and then Councillor Pearce. So Councillor Bolt, can we pass the mic, and then Councillor Evans.
Yep, thank you for that, Chairman. With regards to the crossings, which I think at that plan at the top right hand, that's across the A38.
Yeah.
That's going to be an uncontrolled crossing. Is that what you're also calling a tactile crossing?
Yeah.
What's a tactile crossing?
When you get to the pavements, there's usually an orange or yellow sort of dipped bobbly surface.
So it's going to be a zebra crossing with a tactile finish each end?
Not zebra. So just the bobbly surface either side of the pavement with the pavement dipped down.
Right. And where would the crossing patrol be operating? On the A38 or the new road?
The primary school currently operate a pedestrian crossing on the new road section, but that's run by the primary school because of the primary school. So it's not something that's provided by this development.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Pearce? Not yet. I'll try again.
Can you hear me now? No. Not sure.
I think we got you then.
All right, okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I'll just shout. These applications, I think, always place us in a difficult position because it meets policy requirements, it ticks boxes, and it includes affordable housing. And we all want to see more affordable housing, but I do have some concerns about this one. I would like some more detail on the form of the affordable housing, what form that will take, how we define that. In terms of Tier 3 settlements, our policy 5.172 says that it's generally expected that such schemes will be community-led. The speakers today have not implied that that is the case, so I would like to know exactly how the developer has, or the applicant has, engaged with the community. It was alluded to by one of the speakers, but with no details, and there does seem to be a disparity there. I am concerned around the fact that it's in flood zone 3A, and page 54 of the report states that the ground here has poor drainage, and I'm not sure that building them half a metre higher than the ground level really addresses the flood risk problem for the surrounding area, other than the development itself. So I do have concerns about this, and although we want to see affordable housing, I'm not sure that it's at any price.
Thank you. Mrs. De Vries?
Thank you. In terms of community consultation, the site was subject to pre-application advice, and they did consult at pre-application stage with the parish council. You heard from the agent this morning there was also a leaflet drop, although how extensive that was and how far that went out, I'm not sure. As part of the planning application, there was a site notice that went up on site, and the residential properties immediately adjoining the site would have received a neighbour notification letter. So that's the engagement as part of the application. In terms of flood zone 3, because it's meeting a locally identified need for West Huntsville, the search area for other sites at lower flood risk are West Huntsville or the immediate surrounding area. All of the immediate surrounding area is also flood zone 3, so there's no area at less risk than this site. And in terms of drainage, the reference was because the lead local flood authority normally encourage more sustainable drainage systems for infiltration, but because the site is surrounded by land drains, they're penned at a set level in accordance with the IDB. So the likelihood of acceptable infiltration rates is slim, which is where the drainage comment came in, because it's unlikely that they would drain it in the way that the LFA would originally want, but they accept that argument in principle. So there are alternative ways to drain it, but slightly less sustainable. But that was because of the surrounding land drains rather than the flood risk. And in terms of affordable housing, the housing needs assessment would have identified what number bedrooms they need, what type of properties they need. This development will be providing the identified need, because that's the point of the policy, is there's a need that's been determined, and the selection of accommodation needs within that assessment will be met as part of this application, but the detail of that gets secured through the legal agreement, 106 agreement, and conditions through later applications.
Okay. Councillor Evans, can we pass the microphone down, please, Councillor Bolt? Thanks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Yes, similarly share some concerns. For this to be policy compliant, it needs to meet with the housing needs assessment initially, it's my understanding. We heard from the Parish Council that there was some disparity between the housing needs assessment in October 2019 and September 2020. I can't see the housing needs assessment on the planning portal. I can only see the comments from the Housing Needs Department of the Council. Are we able to comment to respond to that point made by the Parish Council, please?
Mrs. DeVries or Mr. Howlett?
I can pick that up. You can hear me now. Sorry, I feel like I've been in the bottom of a bucket for
You
most
might
of
need
the
to
day.
talk to the mic though.
Yes, in terms of the affordable housing needs assessment, so as you heard from the speaker, there was one undertaken in 2019, which identified a need for 10. As part of that, there was at that time there was 32 people listed on the Somerset Home Finder, so effectively the waiting list, with either a request for properties within West Huntsville or with a local connection. Only 4 people out of those 32 actually were picked up by the Housing Needs Survey in 2019. So what the affordable housing team did was they actually reran a targeted housing needs assessment at the Home Finder list, which had increased to 50 by 2020. And so they've picked up the additional numbers through that process. So it's a very robust methodology, and the housing needs assessment sets all this out. The updated one sets this all out. So that's the disparity. The second part was a targeted one because the people on Home Finder Somerset hadn't identified with the original survey. Now, the reasons for that, people think they're on a waiting list, so they don't necessarily put themselves forward when they get the HNA survey originally. So that's what we think happened there. So it was a bit of targeted work because the Home Finder numbers were going up, but the housing need assessment had only identified 10 originally. Hopefully that explains the disparity.
Thank you. Am I correct in understanding that in the vicinity of this, there have been places where during the pandemic, people who are homeless have been accommodated as part of that? And would that have had any bearing on the number of people joining the housing list?
Sorry, I don't follow.
There have been a number of homeless people accommodated in accommodation in West Huntsville and in Highbridge who are homeless, who may have joined the Home Finder list and therefore be looking for accommodation in their immediate vicinity where they've been accommodated. Has that led to an undue spike in the data?
Well, I suppose the housing needs survey is only a snapshot in time, isn't it, in 2020? So it wouldn't have had that updated information. But of course, as I said, there was 50 people originally, in 2020 identified on the Home Finder Somerset list, of which, when they've done the targeted interviews on the phone and the emails, other people have come forward. It doesn't mean that those people who still haven't come forward aren't in need. So, you know, with these things, it is always a snapshot in time. The one thing we all know, because we have this discussion on these applications all the time, is once need is established and built, the need goes up. So people actually will bring themselves forward to say, actually, we are in housing need. So the need goes up, it doesn't go down. There isn't a magic bullet for this issue in terms of it being part of the housing crisis. So housing need will go up. The housing needs survey is meant to be a piece of evidence to underpin an application going forward. It's a snapshot in time. The figures that the housing need assessment at that time was identifying was 18. This application comes in and fulfills that. If there's movement around the margins of that, I don't know. I haven't got that information to hand. But there will always be a bit of a buffer in this because housing need is out there and is usually above the levels the survey identify. So I think it's a safe and robust position, and one that we've taken at Wedmore, Lavington recently, on all those other schemes. So we're being consistent. It's not. I think it's probably a bit unfortunate that it was called a light touch housing needs assessment, because I think if it'd been called targeted, it would have been seen as something a bit more robust. But that's what it was, a targeted exercise.
And possibly a learning point would be it would have been helpful to have had that housing needs assessment there so that we could read it rather than read the officer's comment on the housing needs. It's looking at primary evidence is always more helpful than looking at secondary evidence. Just the other points I wanted to make. I share the concern about the school parking area. I've seen the phrase solar gain on the PowerPoint slide. I'm not sure what solar gain necessarily means. I don't think it means that there's going to be more sunshine in West Huntsville as a result of this development. So I would like that explaining, please. I've made the point before about engagement being encouraged in the local plan and I'm going to make it again because Stuart always likes responding to it. We've clearly seen engagement with which the community are perhaps not happy with. It's certainly not been, as Councillor Pearce suggested, community-led in this instance. It's been, and the engagement clearly has not been satisfactory for some. And I just want to flag up that point that the community engagement is so important here, and I hope we would encourage them with more of a fanfare when developers come forwards. I do wonder, with the condition on the local housing, at the moment it says it's going to be left to the housing officers to put forward that condition. Are we able to strengthen that now in terms of tying it down to people with a genuine local connection to West Huntsville?
Thank you. In terms of, if I start with the orientation and solar gain, because this was, it's now a validation requirement for large-scale developments to submit a sustainability statement. So it's trying to encourage developers to think early about how you incorporate those into a development to try and encourage more sustainable construction, more efficiency in construction, and for the ongoing management costs for any future occupiers. For orientation and solar gain, obviously it's an outline application, so the footprint and the layout of the properties, whether they're facing, in one direction or another, is still yet to be set. But one of the sort of points that came across in the sustainability statement was they'd be considering orientation and solar gain so that they had lower window sills to let more light in during the winter months, but also have landscaping, like deciduous landscaping to the front, so it would shield too much heat during the summer months. So it's sort of active heating, cooling, so to kind of prevent too much waste on energy costs. But it's, with a lot of sustainability stuff, planning's on the cusp of it. And again, as per the presentation, it's an outline application, so these details aren't set, but it's stuff that the developer is thinking about. So hopefully it will inform the detailed application as and when it comes forward. And the condition that I've recommended is that when the next applications come forward, they set out how they've taken these measures and incorporated it into the layout and the detailed design of the properties. In terms of the housing needs assessment, it is a published document, but it wasn't submitted on the application, so it wasn't part of the planning application file, but I do take your point that it may have been useful to have it as part of the application pack. And in terms of the 106, there is at the bottom end of the recommendation before the conditions in the report, you've got the heads of terms, so that covers the 40% affordable housing. So the tenure, the mix to meet the affordable housing need will be set in the legal agreement. So by the time we get to the point where there's a signed legal agreement at the end of the planning process, that will specify that the development will meet the housing need that's been identified as part of the housing needs assessment. If members wanted to tweak the wording to make it clearer that that's the definition of that bullet point, I'm happy to take that. I think just as a final point as well, condition 1, I've just noticed, has actually got access in as a reserved matter. It's not a reserved matter, it's a detailed matter. So if we get to a point where any recommendation gets moved, I would like the ability to take the word access out of condition 1, please.
Thank you. Can I just check on in terms of the section 106 you were just mentioning? I was looking at it, I may have missed it, but does it specifically explain that it is local lettings policy, that it is therefore it is local residents?
That's the point I was going to make, which is to pick up Councillor Evans's comment. Yeah. This isn't a strategic allocation like the other sites which are referenced in the report. So this is a T3 site. It would be a local connection as part of that. So we'll have a local lettings one. We can make that explicit in the minutes as part of that. But it would be at that level because West Huntsville is a Tier 3 settlement. It would have a local connection.
Yeah, the bullet point at the moment does say on-site delivery of 40% affordable housing. So it's delivered on-site, tenure to be agreed with the affordable housing manager to ensure compliance with the housing needs assessment. So yes, we've got sign off with the affordable housing manager, but it should comply with the housing needs assessment to meet the identified need and then be controlled to meet that need through the 106. But if members wanted a bit more certainty, we can add that in.
Yeah, I think certainly on that you would need to mention the local lettings, because otherwise it still meets the need, but it could be allocated to someone who's not.
Yeah.
Okay. Could I ask a couple of questions, if I might, that haven't been raised so far? The parish council made reference to the parish plan. Just wondered if you could clarify how that's been taken into account in the assessment, and also the community benefit is being highlighted as the car park. How did that become the community? I mean, where's that come from, in fact, as to why that's the community benefit? Is that what the parish council was raised, or where else has it come from?
In terms of the parish plan, the reference to it by the speaker was the fact that there was no will from the parish for any development. It was 2016. So whilst it was a valid and set document in 2016, the housing needs assessment kind of trumps it in terms of timing. We've had 2 since the parish plan, one of which identified 10, the second one identified 18. So whilst it's a valid background consideration, in terms of timing, it gets overtaken by the housing needs assessment that sets a more up-to-date sort of point for us to consider against applications. In terms of the car park, I think it was in response regarding sort of congestion and on-street parking for New Road, and what could be done to sort of try and ease that situation. So it started off as a conversation of we could provide a car park, which we went back to the developer and said that's only any good if the school wants it. So subsequently the school did confirm that they were happy to take it on and sort of use it in connection with the school, which would alleviate, in officers' opinion, some of the on-street congestion in New Road.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Hendry next, and then Councillor Bolt, and then Councillor Murphy. So Councillor Hendry, can the micro? Yeah, thanks.
Okay, can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. The HNA, these figures are never actually 100% accurate. It's only a snapshot of that particular time. On the point of affordable homes and homeless people, when homeless people apply to SDC or anybody else for temporary accommodation, it's supposed to be a maximum of 56 days. When people are in that position, technically the council by then have found them a place to go. It doesn't always happen that way. In fact, it's only about 50% of the time. Then the next set of 56 days starts again. So the homeless people don't get accommodated as and should, and it's because the housing stock for affordable homes is well below what it should be. Stuart quite rightly pointed out there that very often the homeless people are in these positions think they're on the register, the home finder, and they're not at all, because they themselves, it's their responsibility to go on that and do it. But it doesn't always happen that way. When you get somewhere like this, like albeit West Huntsville, wherever the case may be, and you get a development of like this size coming here and they say 18 affordable homes as part, we should all be thankful, very thankful that there's a developer actually doing it of this size and providing the affordable homes. The village of West Huntsville is a lovely place, really nice. I actually used to live there many years ago, and it's a really nice place. To add this development like this, it enhances the village. It's not in any way, to my mind at all, as being a minus point. It's actually a plus point. So all in all, the affordable homes, the other ones, the school, the access onto the A38, package the whole thing up, and I actually think it's acceptable. And on that note, I would like to put forward the case officer's recommendation. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And just to confirm, Councillor Hendry, that's with the amended condition 1.
Yeah, of course.
And the reference to the local lettings policy as part of the 106.
I take that as a go ahead anyway, yes.
Okay, thank you. Next was Councillor Bolt. Again, can the microphone be passed down?
Thank you. First of all, just going back to the crossing thing, Tactile Crossing isn't an officially recognised road crossing. There's no requirement for a car to stop with somebody waiting at the pavement. That's why I was concerned when they were saying a crossing on the A38, which I think is a good thing for a development like this. It's got to have some sort of control on it. But the next one is, with regards to county education, they've said school places generated. Is there, I'm not sure of the age group of that adjacent school, but is there sufficient places in that school to accommodate them, or are we going to have people having to travel to other schools? Bearing in mind we've got with this probably over 1,000 houses at least being built in that immediate vicinity.
Mrs. Rees.
Thank you. Currently, we haven't got any objection from education in terms of capacity. So we're happy that there is currently spaces available, but they rerun the figures in terms of what capacity they've got almost annually and calculate it on an annual basis. But at the moment, the comment we had back from county education doesn't suggest any capacity issues.
So basically it's first come, first serve. Whoever gets up first will get it all. It isn't taking into account the whole picture of all the housing that's going to be there.
In terms of accommodating additional spaces, the comment we get from county education does require contributions through the community infrastructure levy. So there is a charge per school place, if you like, which they will then subsequently collect from the SIL pot. But so that's their comment outlining what contribution they would take from the development to be able to accommodate for any additional spaces if they need them.
So there is sufficient room on the existing school site to actually put up further accommodation should that be needed.
Yeah, that's the comment we've got. We haven't got an objection on capacity.
Thank you.
There is, of course, the new school at Bree Farm that was.
Yeah,
that's
that's
part of that as well.
Yeah, that's what I was saying about the age groups. I'm not sure if one's at a lesser age group then goes up to the newer school, or whether the newer school is going to take on all the age groups.
Both primary.
Both primary.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Councillor Murphy, can you pass? Thanks.
It's just a question on clarification. I was very interested to see when you wrote about, when you had this paragraph about solar gain, it mentions a shielding mechanism. What is that?
It'll be subject to detailed design, but it could be like an overhang of a window, so you don't get the direct glare of the sunshine.
So you've no detail of that?
No,
no
it's an
detail
outline
at
application.
this stage.
There's
Okay.
no detail of any.
Thank you very much. Just I don't want to hold things up.
Okay. Any further comments or questions from members? At the moment, then I have a proposal, which was to grant permission with the amended condition 1 and the local lettings policy highlighted. Is that seconded? Councillor Kingham? Okay. In which case, if there's no further comments, those in favour then of that recommendation to grant permission, please show. Six. Okay, and those against, please show. Six. And that's all members present. Okay, in which case, as is normal, I will use my casting vote in the way that I voted the first time, which is to go with the grant permission. So that is permission granted. Do we want to take a break at that point for a short comfort break, and also to sort out if there's any technical issues with the microphones for next time when we've got speakers? Okay, in which case we will take a short comfort break and we'll restart at 11 o'clock. 10 minutes? Okay, thank you. All right. Thank you all very much. Can I welcome you back to the Development Committee? If we then move on our agenda to the next item, which is the application in Puritan. And Mr. Noon, I think you're presenting this one.
Thank you, Chairman. This is an application to vary conditions, 3 conditions of a previously approved permission that granted planning permission in a hybrid form originally. So that was detailed permission for a petrol filling station and some drive-through units. That was really detailed. And then the second part of that hybrid permission was for some B1, B2 and B8 employment units on the remainder of the site. The conditions that the applicant has asked us to vary are condition 3, which was the plans condition, to allow for some variations to 3 buildings that have been built on the southern part of the site. That's the petrol filling station building and the 2 drive-through units. They also asked us to vary condition 8, which originally required both accesses, so there's one off the A38 and then one entrance only off the A39. That originally required both of those to be done up front. What they're now saying, because of some difficulties with agreeing the detail of the access on the A39, what they would like is for the A38 entrance only to be provided initially, and then the A39 entrance within 6 months of opening the site. And then finally, condition 28, the original condition they would like us to vary, is the opening hours of the petrol station and drive-through units. That was originally conditioned in sort of quite a very restrictive way, which would effectively prevent them opening on Saturday afternoons and Sundays. So they obviously want those to be open on 7 days a week. So those 3 conditions are the ones they vary. Because the application has already been implemented, if anyone's been past recently, the 3 buildings on the detailed casting site, the drive-throughs and petrol filling station, have already been built. We also had to vary all the other conditions just to reflect the fact that it's already a immense development and a lot of details have been agreed through the discharge conditions on the original. So I've taken the opportunity in my report just to sort of restructure the commission just to reflect the fact that it's firstly detailed for one part of it, and secondly, it's outlined on the rest of it, and then also to update everything. So I will come to the conditions at the end of my presentation. So I've got a couple of little updates on those. But I've also just got a couple of updates at the beginning, just to reflect comments that have been received since the report was written. Firstly, technical side, National Highways, as Highways England are now called, have confirmed that they have no objections to variation conditions. Historic England, who have an interest in the site because of the Schedule H appointment to the north, they have confirmed that they have no objection to the revised conditions. I've also received 3 neighbour comments, which I will summarise very briefly here, but essentially raising issues that have been sort of touched on before. But they are concerned that there will be noise that will disturb sleep, there will be glare from headlights, that the acoustic fence that has been provided on the perimeter of the site is not making any difference, given that the houses down end are elevated relevant to this site. They make the comment that there is another garage on the other side of the A38, which is open 24 hours a day, so this variation isn't needed. But the Bristol Road access, they question the feasibility of that and the safety of that, whether they can actually fit in 3 lanes, being a turn right lane into the site. They note that the cycle path on the other side of the road in connection with the other garage, Mr. Budgeon's there, and the filling station there saying that has not been delivered. You stated that the original application commented saying that it was stated that this wouldn't be a motorway service area, so why do they need the extended hours? Traffic safety issues on the A38, reflecting the fact that the A39 entrance would initially be provided, and comments about continuous noise within the site from queuing vehicles at the drive-through. Move on just with my presentation. Here is the site, the Dunball roundabout in the centre picture. The site we're looking at is this one to the northeast of the roundabout. This obviously Google have flown over since the previous permission granted, and you can see that the site at that point was obviously cleared. You can see the white building, so that's the other petrol filling station on the other side of the A38. And then you can see the M5 just up here, junction 23 there. You can see the A39 coming down in the dual carriageway down to the Dunball roundabout. Just a little bit closer in, you can see here at this stage the sort of basic layout is starting to take form, and the construction entrance in the position of the approved final entrance, but that's there is operational construction based on the A38. The red line sign just to show that it does include the development site as well as works on the A38 outside the site, and then ultimately, as you see here, just on the A30 line, there's just the red line kicks out. That shows the entrance, where the entrance would be as a slip road off the eastbound A30. Just in terms of the mix of detailed permission is on the southern part of the site, and then on the northern part of the site, the three little coloured shaded areas, and those are the parts which outline permission installed. At this point, that outline element, only the points of access are to be agreed now. The remainder of that will come with the reserve maps on that northern part of the site. We have all the details on the southern part of the site as well. So in detail, we have the entrance on the left-hand side there from the A38 coming in through the site, a spur off north to serve the outline. There is a development site just in here, just to the south of the entrance road here. That's not part of the detail today. And then the area down the southern part of the site provides a petrol filling station on this sort of western front of the site, the shop, the fueling area for cars to the south of it, and an HGV fueling over there just to the western end of it. Some jet washes on the southern part of the site, and then these two freestanding buildings, they are built, they are there. One is badged up as a Starbucks, the other one is badged up as a Kentucky Fried Chicken out there. And then at the bottom here, you can see the entrance in, sweeping in. This would be the entrance only coming in off the A39. That is the bit that they are asking us to agree to a 6-month delay. Now they've sorted out the detail of that. This would in effect mean that the first phase, just for 6 months, of the petrol filling station and food drive-throughs would operate solely on A38. And you can see there, the carriageway is connected into the site partially to get a third middle lane for a right turn into the site. So that's all the Christmas concern. Both of them have the A38, as you see it today, doesn't have enough width. That extra width is achieved by deflecting it slightly into the development site. Petrol filling station building, top drawing is the sort of south facing into the site, that glazed area over petrol pumps. The rear is essentially a solid, just the black face to the rear, should face that solid behind it, and then the two end elevations, and just basically a very simple floor plan which will be fitted out internally to fit sort of the operator's needs. It does allow for the improved A5 takeaway. It does allow that to operate as a drive-through within the petrol filling station building. So it's a collection. The little normally bit at the back sticking out would allow that collection point there. This is the building which is currently badged up as the Starbucks. So you can see there sort of main facade there with sort of reglazing. Side elevation you see from the A39 is this bottom right hand elevation. But a very functional building. It's all fairly standardised building. Probably not similar to any other Starbucks anywhere. Try through out there. And then other takeaway, this is the one which is badged up as a Kentucky Fried Chicken. The elevation you see from the A30, from the side, is essentially this middle one here. That's from the A39. Just reminding us just the layout there, and sort of moving on to some sort of elevation all in context. They're essentially read as this is a sequence of drawings sort of looking north, starting with this area here. That's the HGV fueling area. Moving on to the petrol filling station. and then as though you're viewing from the south, the side of the coffee outlet, and then continuing on the next drawing down with the side of the other drive-through unit, Kentucky Fried Chicken. And then there's just a sort of cross-section in the side, looking sort of from the west through the site. So it's all single-story, relatively low buildings. And then the corresponding rear elevations from within the site, looking south, using the backs of these buildings. In terms of internal arrangements, the whole site has been tracked for HGV, all the vehicles that are likely to use it, including all the servicing and vehicles arriving at the petrol filling station to fuel up. And that's all been shown to work through the tracking drawing. This layout hasn't changed since the previous grant of permission. So we're only looking here at whether or not this layout would be safe to work without that A39 entrance at the bottom for the first 6 months. Purely the first 6 months of this detailed permission. Some site views of the site. This is from the A39 looking into the site. This is courtesy of Google Earth. A couple of months ago here, see things under construction. So you can see the frame of the canopy for the petrol filling station on the left-hand side, the side of the Starbucks building, and then behind the trees there, that will be the Kentucky Fried Chicken outlet. And then from more up-to-date photographs, that is the site as we see today. It is essentially built out. It appears to have been mothballed. There was no one on site working when I went there yesterday. They do have very difficulties with sorting out the access arrangements with county highways through their section 278 agreements. Those agreements would flow from the grant of permission if we are minded to approve this today, because they wait for the planning commission to be in place before they finalise the 278 agreements. Just sort of panning the camera around, you can see it's all badged up, so we're pretty clear who the operators will be. And then there's the last building there. Next, I'm going to move around to the A3, just looking back down there just to see it all in context. That's roughly, you can see where they cleared the edge there. That's where that A39 entrance will be. And sweeping around the back of that building. Just from the roundabout, roughly, just sort of looking at the site, most of the site boundary treatments have been sort of retained. They've been thinned out a bit, but that is all part due to be retained. The boundary treatment planting around the site will be retained as part of this scheme. And then going up again, which is again courtesy of just so during the construction phase, that is the end of the A38. And that's how it is today. So you see the boundary treatments have largely survived. There is a really immediately inside that, and that's according to the 278 agreement, bridging that. And then just looking inside through that entrance there, so that will be the road taking you in, round up towards the back, round to the right, taking you to the petrol filling station area. Left-hand side up would be the employment units. And you can see there that the acoustic fence has gone in at the back, that structure all the way along, that you can see all the way around that side of the site, to provide a degree of protection noise to the properties down there. That has been done in accordance with details that have been already agreed with the discharge conditions, and I bring those forward in my recommendation today. And then just looking, that's just the employment site, just to show that that fence does go all the way around. Just looking at the backs of the buildings, that's the back of the filling station building. You can see the little collection on the right-hand side, and then just sort of a bit more in context. And then that's the HGV filling bit. And then finally, right up in the corner, this is that road that comes out from down there onto the A38. I just stepped inside there, took this photo, so looking down from across the land down to this week, looking at it in detail. In terms of conditions, a couple of updates. Firstly, I've structured the permission to read as a full detailed permission. For the first part of the permission, that's conditions 1 to 23. It's a detailed permission. It almost exists as a standalone in terms of condition discharge. Conditions 24 through to 47 are the elements that apply to outline. I would suggest that we insert on the decision in front of condition 24 just a heading to say these are conditions that relate to the outline. It does mean that there is some duplication, but it means each condition only needs to be discharged once. Where you have them applying both the full and the outline level, you have to discharge the same conditions twice, and that can get confusing. I feel it's just easier to structure it like this. But in terms of 28, I've realised that the structure of that in the report would effectively allow the outline to operate for 6 months using just the 838. That is not the intention. The outline is always clear that must be served on both entrances. So I'm suggesting redraft 28 and set out the elements to make it clear that outline can only be served by both entrances. Just a couple of other little tidy ups. Condition 25 just need to delete reference to the petrol filling station and drive-throughs because obviously they're not under the outline condition. Condition 28, as you see here, redrafted. Condition 33 is a little bit unclear just in terms of the reference number to the previous application. I just need to tidy that up. So subject to those changes, the conditions are as presented to you in the report. So really to sum up in terms of the key issues, the principle development of this site for these mix of uses has been established by the previous consent. We are not looking at any changes to those mixes of uses through this section 73 application. So the key issues then come down to the highways impact will change to the point of the A39 access. County Highways Authority have confirmed that they have no objection to that. They are very clear, however, that it can only be for a temporary basis and only to serve this first detailed phase. I think tidying up 28 makes that abundantly clear, and the wording of the makes it clear that after 6 months you must have a 30 entrance in place. Subject to that happening, the county are accepting that highways, national highways, confirm that it doesn't give them any problems with their strategic road network, so basically M5 and junction 23. In terms of community of local residents, yes, the opening hours will be changed, but that's not. I don't consider that to be unreasonable, given the nature of what we have approved here. I think it's expected to be closed on Saturday afternoons and Sundays is probably not reasonable for the type of development that we have here. The hours we're suggesting, I don't think will prove to be unreasonable in terms of neighbour impact. Finally, we have the issue of the change to the buildings. They are functional. They are what we would expect to see in a site like this. Changes that they have proposed, I do not feel we have any in any way increase the visual impact of this site. And on that basis, subject to those tweaks to conditions 25, 28, and 33, my recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Grimes, you indicated.
Thank you, Chairman. In general, I don't have a problem with this application, but I have concerns over the amount of applications after granting permission. They keep coming back with these variations. Now, it goes to the state, would we have given permission had these variations been put in the first place? We get this far too often, and to try and tell me that they want to change the timing for opening hours after the event, and they haven't thought of that before, Sorry, I don't buy that. So although in general I'm not against this, I am really getting concerned and fed up over the amount of applications like this that's coming in. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Noon.
Yeah, I to a degree, yes, I certainly share those sentiments in terms of the amount of work that it does create to vary conditions. Nevertheless, it is an option that is available to a developer. I think, you know, quite clearly, my recommendation for approval, you know, had these been included at the time, I think we would have said yes. I suppose the access, the need to change condition 8 to vary the timing of the access reflects difficulties that have been unearthed and have come about since the grant of permission. The changes to the appearance, the design, unfortunately it does happen. You know, house builders change their house types, coffee operators, chicken sellers change their standard buildings. We need to be pragmatic about that. The hours of operation, I is more difficult. I think had they asked for what it is by this application, we would have said yes originally. It's unfortunate, but we need to make these provisions workable, and sometimes it does take Section 73 to make that happen.
Thank you very much. I've got Councillors Bolt, Pearce and Scott, starting with Councillor Bolt.
Yeah, I got a little bit confused with Adrian's presentation at the end, but I think it'll clear up on this. But the first question is, how much weight was given to the A39 entrance for safety in the and traffic flow in the original plan?
I mean, it was considered essential as part of this development, which is why it was proposed and required of the development. That was there to serve, you know, as part of the whole development of the site. So the detailed bit and the outline element. It's unfortunate that it cannot be delivered now to the timing of the opening. There is difficulty with third-party ownership running alongside the A39 left over from when the motorway was built. It goes back to 75. It's quite a difficult legally to get the Section 278 agreements in place at county level to essentially build the road and get the road, you know, to county standards. That was unknown. They didn't realise it existed when they got the first permission. We're now left in a situation that, you know, see, we have a site built out ready for occupation. They obviously want, you know, as soon as possible. We would rather they waited till they got this 839 entrance sorted out. But they have asked us if it would be safe by those firms to operate it for a limited period, 6 months, usually just perfect. They've asked the question that we considered it, taken advice from the Highways Authority, and their view is that it wouldn't be unsafe, so unsafe that they would resist it. Very strong caveat though, not to serve the outline element, and absolutely not to
I think therein lies the problem I'm having with it. They're saying, oh, yeah, you can only do it for 6 months because of safety concerns. So during that 6 months, are we going to have safety concerns? Surely this is a problem for the developer. And are they guaranteeing that this won't be back in 6 months asking for an extension?
Mr. Noonan.
Unfortunately, we cannot guarantee that. There is no reason to believe this issue won't be resolved. We know who owns the strip of land. It's Highways England, National Highways. They own it. They've got no problem with releasing the land to county. It's a legal transfer of land from them to county. Then that Section 278 agreement is a relatively straightforward matter. It's the transfer of the land because it is appearing it's not registered properly. It's a leftover when this dual carriageway section was built at the same time as the M5. And it just didn't get covered off properly. So we know that no party who has a land interest has got any objection to this happening. It is just the legal tying up of how this bit of land gets to county, and so that then section 278 agreement can then be signed. It's all ready to go. It just needs to be sorted out reasonably. I cannot say hand on heart that they won't be back asking for a further extension, but we know the difficulty is not that this site can't be, it is just simply coming up with legal assessed.
So are we saying that at the end of 6 months, if this comes back after that period, at the end of 6 months, we're going to shut this place down?
I don't think that would happen. I think because simply if we had a situation where we knew the owner of this land was not going to pay more, and as such make this undeliverable, I think our recommendation would be very different. It's because we know that this isn't a ransom strip in the normal sense, where someone's going to try and extract a third of the development value of the site in return for using their ransom strip. That's not going to happen. Highways England said they've got no interest in doing that. They want to spin the land they didn't even know they owned it. They want to shop this land. It's how it goes to county in a way that their citizens will then have to 278 and so on. That is what it is. Not that the exact.
So in effect, their comment about at the end of 6 months, it's got to be in, doesn't actually bear any weight.
But I think, well, I mean, they have no party who has any workings with this is saying it's going to take longer than 6 months. So it's best faith at this stage. I can't give you any.
Mr. Howlett, do you want to come in?
I was just going to say we have to remember what the purpose of the amended condition 28 is, which is to stop the outline elements coming forward in advance of the access. So we are only talking about that first phase of development, which is effectively there. So there is a control. I mean, the 6-month condition will always provide an opportunity for review in terms of that process, but there won't be any more quantum of development coming forward before we've had that. That's because the outline is effectively halted by the amended condition 28, which is why it's really important that that forms part of the recommendation. I mean, we also have to bear in mind, and I sort of take from what Councillor Grimes said at the start, is that things do change. Operators come on board. Planning permission, when granting planning permission, then means the occupiers have some certainty to come forward, and they may have different ways of operating. And I suppose to allow this to go forward at the moment in terms of what's being built has some benefits in terms of local employment, because they'll be able to start the recruitment processes, which otherwise mothballing it further prevents that from happening. So there are some wider benefits of doing this, and I think the harm is managed by that condition 28, because it's effectively saying you can't bring forward the outline elements until the access issue is sorted. So hopefully that gives a bit more reassurance. And then the 6 month is a review. We'll see where we are. We'll have some technical information, I guess, in terms of what the original part, the first phase of that development is generating in traffic. And we'll go into it with a bit of knowledge of the reality in the situation rather than the theoretical highways assessment that we're basing everything on at the moment.
Just hold on a minute, Councillor Barr. Mrs. De Vries, I think you wanted to come in.
I was just going to say, in terms of the two accesses are required for the development as a whole, which is why it's important that we're splitting out the difference between the approval of reserved matter, or the detailed consent, and the outline. As part of this application, what they submitted was the highways technical note, which looked at traffic generation from the detailed element on its own in isolation. And so it's that information that County Highways have considered, and they considered that for a limited period, given what the issue is with the land transfer, they were satisfied that that in itself wouldn't result in a significant highway safety issue. The control, as Stuart said, is with the fact that the outline permission is effectively capped until this work's done. The 6 months, whilst it may be a bit of an arbitrary review figure, it does sort of maintain momentum in terms of getting everyone to sort it out, because legal issues can take a number of months, but all parties have seen that condition and all parties are signed up to that condition at the moment. So the applicant and National Highways and County are all sort of in agreement that it should hopefully conclude itself within 6 months.
Councillor Bold.
Totally off that subject. Your recommendation, I think it's 42. It's regarding the noise levels for the nearest housing. I'm just wondering, is that at the boundary of the housing or at the acoustic fence. I'm really thinking, you know, most houses nowadays, if it's inside the house, you would have a lower level than if somebody was sat in the garden.
Mr. Noon. On page 33.
Does say when assessed at the nearest noise sensitive properties in accordance with the BS standards?
Yeah. So I think that, you know, that, yeah, at the nearest noise sensor, so that would be, you know, at the boundary of it, it's not within. So probably, I believe that British standard document will set out how that is done, where it is done. So that is, you know, a condition that is being brought forward from the previous consent or unchanged. So that is really, this particular one here is relating, unfortunately, is relating to the outline element. So any plant or air conditioning that is installed that bit of the site, I think there is an equivalent condition in relation to the petrol filling station.
So we're saying it's not inside the building, it's at the boundary of the property.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Pearce.
Thank you. Yeah, our previous speakers have raised concerns that I was going to raise over concerns over the legal issues. I really don't share your optimism that this could be resolved in months. Legal issues can take years, so I am really concerned about this, the temporary access dragging on and on and on, and the impact that could have. I just wonder why there's a justification for another petrol station when there is one across the road, especially given the supply problems, you know, that could see queues of traffic on both sides of the road. So the other issue I have is just regarding the climate change elements, at the risk of being the ranty person that always raises the climate change stuff. It mentions policy S5 within the list of policies within the plan, but I can't see it anywhere within the report, and it would be hard to understand how it could be in there, but it seems to have dropped off unless I've missed it. So I would like to have some sort of reasoning around how this meets our climate change requirements, please.
Mr. Noon.
I mean, in terms of the design of buildings and the layout of the site, unfortunately, the layout of the site has previously been agreed. It is what it is. The design of the buildings is a functional. They are functional buildings intended to serve their purpose in the context of where they are. It is kind of hard to relate a petrol filling station to sort of the climate change sustainability input. It is selling. It is, unfortunately, that it is a fact that petrol filling stations are still with us and will be with us for some time. There is a condition which I was just looking through. There is a requirement that I have brought forward from the previous commission in terms of the provision of car charging points within the development. Just looking for that. I believe it's
condition 9.
9. It's not, sorry, on the full part of the scheme. So yes, I think petrol filling stations do also include for electric car charging. I think it will make that a condition. I think that in terms of the nature of the development we are proposing here, that is probably as far as we can go in terms of climate change sustainability requirements.
Thank you, Mrs. DeBreeze. I think you wanted to comment.
Yeah, just in terms of, for the detailed element, we have got conditions for cycling and pedestrian links. So part of trying to encourage more sustainable transport methods, we have got the electric car charging points, as Adrian's already set out. in terms of the outline element, and what we have done on a number of major housing schemes is we do condition sustainability statements so that when they submit any approval of reserved matters, they outline what sustainability measures have been incorporated as part of the construction. So given the outline conditions that are subject to approval at this meeting, if members were so minded, they could add a condition requiring the sustainability statement to be submitted and approved as part of the approval of reserved matters to consider how sustainability is factored into the construction of any further consents on the site.
Thank you. Councillor Scott.
Thank you. 2 points really. Firstly, the entrance onto the A38 is, I can't really remember, on the original plan, is that intended to be two-way traffic? Suddenly stop. Two-way traffic anyway, or was it one way from the onset? And because I haven't really got an issue with this 6-month problem, because it seems to be a technical issue that hopefully will be resolved within the 6 months. And the other thing is, when was the development going to be opened anyway? Is it, you know, in the next month or so, or is that going to take a while to open it? Because it doesn't look particularly finished at the moment. And the other thing is just to confirm the hours of opening of the drive-through area. I'm a bit confused because I haven't actually, presumably it's just to rectify the Saturday evening going up to say 22 hours and being open on Sundays and bank holidays within that time frame. But could you confirm what the Class B opening time would be, or delivery time would be? Would that be the same, or is that going to be restricted?
Thank you. Mr. Noon.
Okay. So yes, I think the condition for the petrol filling station drive-through is 0600 to 2200 daily. The environmental health officer didn't agree to that in terms of the employment uses, and so those conditions at the time there has to be spared. So just looking very quickly there, those hours, I think I'm suggesting those remain unchanged. So it's not on Saturday afternoons and not on Sunday. So there you go. Condition 45. So the employment part of the site, the northern part of the site, would remain as per the original permission in terms of the hours, whereas the petrol filling station drive-throughs on the southern part of the site, they would be allowed to open from 6 till 10 at night daily. The other point in terms of the access arrangements, it's two-way in off the A38 and one-way in only off the A39. So it's just a slip road coming in to the site of the A39. In terms of when it's will be open, I suspect we'll see a lot of change, to be honest. Whilst they have provision to stay, to delay the A39 entrance, the section 278 to deal with the A38 entrance is not straightforward either. And there's a possibility that whilst they're sorting that out, the A39 entrance will catch up anyway. I did mention there's a reed running inside the hedge there. That's got to be bridged over. That agreement is not finalised yet. So in terms of when it opens, it'll be open. All the legally is done on the A38, and I suspect probably weeks, if not a month or two away anyway. And the A39 agreement will probably catch up quite quickly once approval has been granted. Thank you.
Could I just have a clarification though from what you were saying earlier? The permission being granted today, were it granted, enables them to do the 278 works on the A38. So if we weren't to grant today, they can't do the 278 because they haven't agreed this application.
Yeah, essentially they can't discriminate because it is their in conflict with their standard position, which is the original one.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Evans, can we pass the mic? Thanks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. This is a bit of a pickle, to put it mildly. However, I've listened very carefully to Mr. Noon's explanation. I think this is a good, pragmatic solution to move this forwards. It's not ideal, it's not perfect, but I would like to move the officer's recommendation.
Can I just check on that, Councillor Evans? There was discussion, I think, from Councillor Pearce about a sustainability condition to be added. Is that something?
I am very happy to echo the ranty contributions from Councillor Pearce.
Okay, thank you. Is that Councillor Facey?
Yes, Chairman.
Thank you, that's seconded. Okay, are there any further comments or questions that members have? No, okay, so that is, the recommendation is to grant permission subject to the amended conditions as outlined by Mr. Noon, and also the addition of a sustainability condition for the reserved matters part that will come forward in due course. If members are clear on that, all in favour of granting permission, please show. That's unanimously carried, so permission is granted. Right, members, that brings us to the next application where we have a speaker present, and we're on page 67. And Burnham Road, Highbridge. And is it? It's me. It's Mrs. DeVries, you're present in this. Thanks very much.
Right, thank you very much. This is an application that members saw last time, so it's 36 Burnham Road in Highbridge. It's a partly retrospective consent for formation of a new driveway and drop curb to the front of the property, and it's partially retrospective because they've done some of the building works to one of the walls on the front. The application is before members because the recommendation is contrary to the Town Council's view. They're objecting due to concerns relating to highway safety matters, which are detailed in the report. The application was reported to committee last month and was deferred to allow dimensions to be considered regarding a bus stop and proximity to the proposed access, and seek further highway information and comments on the proposal. So additional information has been submitted to officers since the last hearing at committee, just showing tracking plans to make sure vehicles can get in and out of the access, and further comments have been received from County Highways, which I will come on to as part of the presentation. So this slide just lists the relevant policies from the local plan and the neighbourhood plan for the area. The main considerations of the application are impacts on visual and residential amenities, highway safety, flood risk and the historic environment. And the reason the application was deferred, as previously mentioned, was highway safety concerns from the panel. So the application site lies within the town of Highbridge to the north of Burnham Road, and it's a B classified road, so there should be turning provided within the site to enable any new vehicle accesses to enable vehicles to get in and out in a forward gear. The application seeks retrospective consent for the creation of the access onto Burnham Road and the erection of a rendered wall to the front. The site currently benefits from a vehicle access to the rear, which is accessed through Old Burnham Road. The access is proposed to be tarmacked, and a gravel parking area is also proposed to be created. A section of tarmac would then be placed on the existing grass verge, which would allow access to the pavement and then onto the highway. The wall is specified to be 1.65 metres high, finished in render with coping stones to the top, and as previously mentioned, it's partially retrospective, so site photos currently detail a blockwork wall, and the existing rear access provides one parking space, and it was the applicant's intention to increase parking provision for the property. So image one at the top shows the site as viewed on Google Street View in March 2021, which was prior to the work taking place. So members can see a red brick wall that was in place on this site. Image 2 is from the officer's site visit, which was 1st of July 2021, taken from the southwest of the site. The application site lies to the right of a bus stop, and the blockwork wall is proposed to be rendered with the remaining brick section still in image 2, proposed to create the actual access onto the road. So image 3 shows the site is viewed from the same side of the road to the northwest of the site. Image 4 has been taken from the corner of the junction with the mini roundabout, and image 5 is taken from the southeast with the vehicular access proposed where the pedestrian gate and red brick wall currently are. So at the top you can see the street scene drawing of the wall as it's proposed once completed, and the opening that would be created through the demolition of the brick wall if it were to be supported. And this plan details the pedestrian visibility display that's required across the pavement, which is 2.4 metres by 2.4 metres to the south and west, which is in accordance with standing advice. And this plan details vehicular visibility display, which is 2.4 by 43 metres in both directions, which again is in accordance with standing advice given the 30 mph speed limit. Following concerns raised by members at the last meeting, the case officer revisited the site to confirm the location and projection of the bus shelter and whether this would impact on the visibility display. On-site measurements confirmed that the bus shelter fell outside of the visibility display and does not impede visibility. Additional information was provided in respect to tracking details within the site to confirm whether a vehicle can enter and exit the highway in a forward gear. These details were passed to County Highways for comment. Page 69 on the report before members confirms that having reviewed the parking and turning area, the site is larger than first appeared when driving past, and the dimensions required to enable parking and turning is available within the site. County Highways have confirmed that the visibility display is appropriate, and whilst buses stopping at the bus stop may reduce visibility, when picking up or setting down, this would be temporary. So following the publication of the report, County Highways were asked directly regarding standing advice, and they commented that the proposal complies with standing advice and doesn't warrant a highway safety objection. So the Highways Authority considered standing advice to apply to this proposal and have confirmed that the development complies with this, and there is not a highway safety objection to the application. Conditions are proposed as part of the application to ensure that compliance with standing advice remains. And the new wall that has been erected on the site of the previous existing wall is a similar height to the one previously on site. And whilst there's a change from red brick to render, given the other examples of render within the location, it was not considered that this would in itself result in any visual harm. There is a condition proposed at the bottom of the report that requires the work to be undertaken within 3 months of the date of consent, if it's supported, just to ensure that the impact of the current blockwork wall is mitigated and changed to the render with the coping stones as currently proposed. A small section of grass verge between the pavement and the existing boundary for this property would be lost as a result of the development, but on balance it wasn't considered that this would have a detrimental impact on the street scene. And whilst neighbouring properties on this side and section of Burnham Road don't have vehicular accesses in this location, opposite the site there are a number of dwellings that have parking areas to the front which are also accessed off of Burnham Road, so it wasn't considered to be out of keeping with the character or appearance of the area. The site is within flood zone 3, but due to the nature of the development it was considered unlikely to increase the flood risk elsewhere, and surface water would also be dealt with in accordance with highways requirements as recommended, and the modest nature of groundworks required are considered acceptable in terms of any potential impact on archaeological remains. So as such, officer's recommendation is to grant planning permission with conditions to ensure compliance with standing advice as set out by County Highways. Thank you.
Thank you very much. As you'll see, we have a speaker on this application, Robert Stone, if you'd like to come forward, please.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, I'm Robert Baker. Sorry, that's a colleague. So sorry for the confusion there. But,
no worries. Again, you'll see the time on the clock. Start when you're ready and whenever you are.
Good afternoon, Chairman and members of the committee. As members will be aware, this application is before you again today, having been deferred from the last planning committee meeting in order to address a number of queries raised. The applicant requires a new vehicular access as a property has one parking space situated to the rear. This therefore requires the applicant's cars and anyone visiting the property to park in Old Burnham Road to the rear, which often causes congestion issues. As can be demonstrated on the plan submitted, there is sufficient visibility display of 43 metres in either direction when pulling out of the property, and a car is always able to leave the property in forward gear. From the last meeting, concern was raised with regards to the position of the bus stop as shown on the location and site plans, and whether the measurements taken took into consideration the advertising stand on the side of the bus stop. However, these measurements have been confirmed and a visibility display is achievable as demonstrated on the plans. The bus stop, as plotted, also takes into consideration the advertising stand. A second issue raised was a bus stop will cause issues when the bus is present. However, as outlined by Highways, this is a temporary issue. The speed limit along Burnham Road is 30 miles per hour and is also approaching a roundabout to the northwest. Therefore, the speed of traffic, whilst busy at certain times of the day, is not fast moving. Concern was also raised with regards to pedestrians along the footway. However, an appropriate visibility display can be achieved as demonstrated on the plans. Whilst a footway may be busy around school times, this is not considered to inhibit highway safety. As outlined in the officer's report, Highways are happy that standing advice applies. We note that comment has been raised with regards to the surface media in relation to the BT chamber, and the relevant licensing with Highways will take place regarding this should planning consent be granted. Members also previously raised concern with regards to the height of the wall. The proposed wall is of a similar height to the neighbour's wall and is considered to be scale appropriate. We understand from the applicant that a member of the Town Council visited the site on Sunday last and raised a query regarding why part of the site will be tarmac with the remainder gravel. The tarmac strip is required in accordance with highway standards to prevent any loose chippings entering the road and causing a hazard. The reason the whole drive is not tarmacked is to prevent surface water runoff to the surrounding area. Land drains will be installed with a car parking area acting as a soakaway, which will have a gravel finish. We hope this helps address a number of the concerns which were raised by members at the last meeting. The application conforms with planning policy and guidance set out by Highways Authority, and hope that you will be able to support the application before you today. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hendry, you indicated. Can you pass the mic? Thank you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Being Burnham and Highbridge, I followed this case quite intently. Is this okay?
That's your time limit.
All right, okay.
Next. Everyone else there.
You're too kind, Stephen. Yeah. Right. When this first came before us, I was absolutely steadfast against it. Since then, things have moved on. As I said, I followed it quite closely, all this. I've actually turned 180 degrees, I think, on this one. There is a tactile crossing, I think, that has to be moved. Is that correct? Am I right in saying that? And is it a BT box as well? I think something has to be moved. Just a question about that. Who actually pays towards that? Does the owner of the property have to contribute towards that, or is that just down to BT and the council for moving the tactile? Who actually funds all this?
Mrs. DeVries, you have to.
Do you know that?
It's a licensing requirement that they have to go through county highways. I'm not sure what the fee process is for licenses at highways.
There'll definitely be a fee for the licence. I don't know how much they have to
No,
contribute.
but I just wondered who actually coughs up for that. Is it down to the council just because? Anyway, it's not that important. It's okay. The visual distance, when I first looked at this case, I was really thought that's not possible, cannot be. Since then, I've actually walked from the co-op down the opposite side of the road to have a good look myself. And it's not as bad actually as I first thought it was. The highway standing advice obviously comes in here and it's acceptable. I didn't think it was first, but in actual fact I do now. It's a Class B road, obviously classified, so that contributes to the fact they have to have the turning space within the property and be allowed to leave in a forward gear as we've discussed, and all that complies. So although I was very against it first time round, I've actually turned 180 degrees on this one, so it's not quite as bad as I first thought it was. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Murphy.
Hello, thank you very much. I'm quite puzzled at my colleagues' change in direction because I have not changed in direction at all. There's something I'd like to sort of generally say about this particular site. The bungalows in this area all faced towards Old Burnham Road. That was the front entrance of the bungalow, and the back entrance was always the bedroom. And it looks like from the road that the developer has developed this bungalow, this small bungalow, to the side and to the front to make it into a front-facing house. I think the reasons why they made it facing onto Old Burnham Road in the first place is because the road was quite a busy road. And what they've done is they've converted the garden into the front part of the house. I would say that there is absolutely no chance whatsoever to have a bell-mouth entrance, regardless of what our previous person said and the presentation person said. It's just not possible. The entrance is narrow. It will come straight out onto a verge. It is also not possible to have 43 meters of direct sight past the bus shelter. It's just not possible. And you have the very busy, and now they've told us it's a 30-mile-an-hour limit, and sometimes you have traffic flying through the give-way roundabout when there is no traffic line. But at certain times in the day, the traffic is so busy that it's jammed right up to the end, and this will stop them coming out and going in. They propose to put a caravan in there, and also, and I think that coming out of that very narrow entrance will be quite a difficult stunt. Recently, I was visiting the Co-op, which is only a few yards up the road and has provided more traffic on the road, especially traffic coming out of the Moorland estate. That is a very, very busy junction of movement. And I witnessed them trying to cut down the branches of the bungalow, because apparently the developer owns, I think, 2 or 3 bungalows in that area. I walked along Burnham Road at one time looking at other houses in particular, and I can see that this is a very busy development area. But I noticed, for example, that the plasterer who came to do the wall had parked his truck across the double yellow lines, facing in the wrong direction, and was busy plastering away as if nothing else had happened. And I think that is one of the key points that we have to look at here. We are now living in a delivery area, a delivery period, with white vans and all sorts of vans coming from Amazon and all the various supermarkets, all delivering to houses. And that is what's going to happen. You're going to have vans stopping at what has now become the front of the house. That is the delivery address of the house. They're trying to make it into a frontal delivery area. And that will cause problems of vans stopping on the double yellow line, straddling the pavement, with also many foreign drivers who haven't got a clue, just trying to get the stuff delivered and delivered to the front door. This house easily has a parking space at the original front. The access is the alleyway up the Old Burnham Road. And there's no reason why it should be converted into the front space looking out onto the Burnham Road. The other thing I would point out to you is Sedgemoor District Council's truck had an accident there 2 weeks ago. It's a very busy, accident-prone area. I would suggest that you check on that truck accident, and I don't know what the outcome was, but it was reported to me the other day. So I have to say that I'm really concerned that this is an accident waiting to happen area with lack of visibility, lots of pedestrian traffic, lots of mums and toddlers and carriages walking along to go up Pepper Road to the medical centre. This is not really acceptable. And I would say that certainly under policy D14, 13 and 14, which is to do with delivery, I would say that this is not essentially a safe highway. Is it policy? Yeah, policy D13 talks about enhancing road and personal safety, enhancing the facilities for pedestrians and cyclists. I don't think this complies. I don't think it complies with D13 as sustainable transport and movement, and I think it will cause problems in the future. So I would like to just leave it at that. as much as I could say.
Thank you. Councillor Henry, you indicated again.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The whole debate, obviously, on this property is nothing more than access inside now. It's nothing else. That is it. We're not talking about a block of flats here or several houses built in a small development whereby that would generate traffic and plenty of it too. It's just one single bungalow, I think, isn't it? It's a bungalow, just one single bungalow with the occasional car, which may come and go. Drivers are polite enough to let people in and out of traffic. I do it myself all the time. So albeit that road up to Asda supermarket could get chock-a-block, and that goes without saying. If one particular car, and one only, wanted to come into the traffic, other people would stop and let them out. If they wanted to go in, people would stop and let them out. And one car now and again would not exacerbate the problem in any way, shape or form. We're only talking occasional car. Delivery vans, they do come and go, and I understand what Councillor Murphy's saying. But again, that's not a daily thing. It's not. So all in all, I go back to what I said. First of all, I've turned 180 degrees, and I actually think it's acceptable because there is only the occasional vehicle coming and going and nothing more. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I'm not seeing any other councillors indicating, so I'm going to be looking for Councillor Scott.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Unfortunately, I missed the first debate on this one, but I'm surprised that the actual wall that's been built there is going to be rendered when the walls either side are brick. It would look more pleasing if it was brick. So I'm not sure if the actual wall is part of this application.
Mr. Rees.
Thank you. As part of the last debate at committee, it was confirmed that the brick wall was unsafe. So it got removed by the applicants as an unsafe wall and got replaced with the breeze block wall. I mean, I would have said probably breeze block is more cost effective than a brick wall. And the proposal as part of this application, which is part of the application, is to render it so it won't look like a blockwork wall. It'll be a rendered wall with coping stones on the top. So that is different to the surrounding adjoining red brick. But given the examples, I mean, particularly on this photo as well, there is quite a lot of render in the general surrounding area. So officers didn't raise an objection to the change in materials because it wasn't considered to have an adverse impact on the street scene.
Mr. Rees, can I just ask one question on the wall itself? There was some discussion at the last meeting about the fact that it appeared to be higher than the permission that was being asked for, and then the coping stones were due to be added.
Yeah.
So one would presume that if this goes through with the conditions, they would have to make sure that wall was the correct height.
Yeah, the wall as erected, the plans we've got, the plans before members, the plans that we're asking you to consider, show the wall with the coping stones on the top to be 1.65 metres. So the development as complete should be 1.65 metres. If it's marginally taller than that at the moment by a layer of blockwork, for example, that would need to come off before they complete the development, because we are only looking at and granting consent for 1.65 metres. We're not looking at consenting the blockwork wall as it currently is, because it's not finished.
Thank you. Councillor Hendry.
Thank you, Chairman. In view of everything I've said and the fact I've actually did a walk by, not actually a site visit as such, but I've walked past and had a good look at it again, all the information that's come before us, the highways, everybody else is on board, so I can say I'm comfortable and happy to move the officer's recommendation. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Grimes.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I've listened intently to this. On a personal note, I don't like this application at all, but on purely planning grounds, I can see no reason to object to this, as highways and other consultative bodies do not object. So in this case, I'll second the recommendation. Thank you, Chairman. Although it is with regret doing that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. In which case, members, you've had the recommendation has been both moved and seconded to grant permission. Those in favour, please show. And those against, please show. Could you just indicate again those who were voting against? 4. Okay, thank you. So that is clearly carried. So permission is granted, 8 in favour and 4 against. Thank you, members. Again, if you can turn to the next application where we have speakers present, and that's on page 77 and Cheddar. And Mr. Titchener, I think you're joining us from afar.
Yes, yes. Thank you, Chairman. Can you hear me?
No, can't hear you, Dean. Just hold on there a moment.
Okay.
Only coming from outside. So if we go over to Dean, we'll give you if you can wait about 5 seconds, Dean, and then try and speak. Hopefully we'll interrupt you if we can't hear you.
Right, okay, well, I'm going to start and then obviously just let me know. So the application is for the change of use of land and formation of a pump track recreation facility. It's a land adjoining Cheddar Reservoir off Sharpen Road in Cheddar, effectively at the Sharpen Road playing field. Okay, I just put this slide in just because I thought it would be helpful because not everyone's going to know what a pump track actually is. These images are taken from the design statement that came in with the application, just showing examples of existing pump tracks elsewhere to give a bit of a flavour. I mean, essentially, I've taken a quote here from Wikipedia, but it's a so it's a circuit of rollers, bank turns, features designed to be ridden by riders, primarily on bikes, but also by other means that certainly possible. And the sort of undulations in it allow the riders to use their arms as well as their legs to basically generate movement forwards. It's kind of a sort of not just a sort of lower body workout, but also actually upper body. That's why it's called a pump, because you can pump down with your arms as you go over the undulations. So that's how it gets its name. The location we're talking about is at Sharpen Road playing field. So that's the playing fields all located on this area, just on the edge of Cheddar Reservoir. So a very popular area where there's an existing number of sporting and recreational facilities. So sort of the primary recreational facilities for Cheddar are all located in this area. The red line of the application site is shown here. So the pump track is all contained within this area, in and amongst some of the other sporting provision, which I'll go through shortly. So this is just the block plan. So this just shows the layout. So it's a sort of circuitous sort of track that sort of winds in around itself. Featuring, I'll show you these sort of topographical images in a minute, but with some areas of hard standing between, some grassed areas in between. Sort of you get this sort of upper sort of rest area, which is part of the feature where sort of riders can sort of take breaks between sort of circuits, you know, almost like a sort of a social aspect of it, with a lead-in path. These big lined coloured strips down the side relate to buffers of existing pipes underneath, and that is part of why the application is in front of us today, because the site previously had permission in 2010 and it was to be located 75 metres to the south, so just to the southwest of where we are here, and that was to be adjoining where the skateboard track currently is. But because of the distance of the pipes which came to light after permission was granted, and because of an easement that Bristol Water have over those pipes, they've had to relocate the track slightly to avoid those, and this revised scheme seeks to achieve that. This is some of the site sections. So in terms of those rollers and sort of dips and drops, this just gives a bit of a flavour of what they are going to be like across across the scheme. So you can see some of the indicative sort of heights here. 1.3 metres, 0.5 metres would give you a sense of what the heights are likely to be at different parts of the site. Just drainage, so the little dots just represent soakaway locations, so that will kind of be within within sort of the confines of the track. There'll be those lower points, and soakways will be constructed in there, you know, because the water is effectively going to be channeled towards those as part of the scheme anyway. Just some photographs of the site at the, just to get a flavour of it. So it's an existing green area which is between existing pitches at the moment. So there's rugby pitch to the north and rugby pitch to the south, and then it's to be located in here. So it's a flat, open area of grass at the moment. It doesn't have a, it's not put to a specific use, and so you get a sense of, you know, it's very open, it's very flat, but there's existing facilities in and around. You can see existing buildings associated with some of the other sporting provisions at the site, and some of the rugby pitch goals with the pitch heading off in that direction there. So it's flat, it's open at the moment. Yes, there will be development here. Yes, it will involve building up some of these banked turns, etc. So there will be some visual change arising from the proposal. So, as I said, it's the second application for a pump track. We've had one previously that was granted permission in 2020, 75 metres to the south, and this one is here to avoid the Bristol water pipe, which affected the previous proposal. So just as a quick update in terms of the report before we go through the main body of the issues. One additional representation that's risen to two effectively since this presentation was done. So I had one very late one as well, effectively raising the same issues set out in the quotation marks here in terms of raising an objection to the proposal. So they understood that a contract with Sedgemoor District Council would preclude the proposed use. So Sedgemoor District Council owns the land, but it's leased by Cheddar Parish Council. Concern about the tarmac to be constructed and the large earthworks, and they're not fit for an intended use. It's too close to the rugby goals. They're surprised. They expressed surprise at Cheddar Parish Council and the rugby club's support for the proposal. They say they would support a different location and would be used by a range of ages with very young children vulnerable to injury. So that sort of captures some of the tone of some of the recent two objections that we've had. I don't want to go into detail into the numbers of representations, but clearly actually there's a significant volume of local support in terms of numbers of representations from individuals and from local organisations and schools. We do have those objections. The proposal is in front of us because of the objection of the ward member. The parish council are, however, supportive of the proposal. So just in terms of, I know we've accepted the principle of a pump track at this site before, but I feel it's relevant, especially as here we are at committee, just to go through the principle and how we get there. So it's at sharpened playing fields, which is the focus of existing sporting provisions. You've got cricket, football, tennis, rugby, the skate park. It's a very similar proposal, but just located 75 metres distant from the previous one. Policy D33 of the local plan is the relevant policy consideration. It protects and puts in place criteria to protect outdoor recreational space. So the site is currently open green space, which is to the north of one of the rugby pitches and south of another. So it's kind of in that sort of area between. Sport England are the statutory body for applications that affect playing pitch provision, and they will generally raise an objection if a proposal would result in a functional loss of playing field provision. In their response, they note that they consulted with the Rugby Football Union, so the body representing the adjoining rugby pitches, and the England and Wales Cricket Board because of their proximity as well. So that informed Sport England's response. Sport England overall confirmed that concerns were not raised by those organisations. The proposal would not result in the loss of nor compromise existing sporting facilities. So Sport England did not object. I think they noted that actually some of those organisations on using the adjoining pitches actually saw it as a community benefit and welcomed the proposal. So Sport England felt that the tests in terms of the redevelopment of existing playing field provision were met, and those tests relate to our tests set out in policy in effect, set in D33. So the proposal in our mind would also be compliant with policy D33. Cheddar's neighbourhood plan is part of the development plan for the area, and they have a relevant policy, SLW1, has an objective to seek to encourage healthy lifestyles. The policy states that Sharpham is to be preserved as the prime public outdoor sports and leisure facility located in the parish. It states enabling new pitches at or near the site to accommodate the growing community is an objective. Now, this proposal is a track, so it's not technically a pitch. It is, however, considered to be compatible with those objectives. What it does is focus sporting and leisure provision at this site in a similar way to what the skate park provision does, providing opportunities for people to use a similar type of proposal, that's going to attract people of all ages, and to use something that they can undertake leisure activities on in an informal way. It's not, it's free to use. And it has obviously the support of Sport England, who are the body for looking over sort of sport and leisure type proposals. So we would consider that broadly it is in compliance with SLW1. The revised location is also acceptable to Bristol Water, given the proximity of their pipes. They haven't raised any objection to the proposal. So the principal development, therefore, when you take into account those factors, the views of Sport England, local and neighbour plan policy is considered to be acceptable. In terms of design, so we've got local plan policies, Cheddar neighbour plan policies. They seek high quality design, which responds to local character. So as I stated, it's a loop track. It's about 45 metres by 35. It's got a range of rollers and jumps. The track is going to be laid with high quality asphalt, so that's sort of a fixed surface, so it's not a sort of loose gravelly surface, and that's done for a couple of reasons: to sort of minimise its erosion, so to ensure its sort of longevity, but it also allows a wider range of users. So things like scooters or skateboards can go on it because it's well surfaced. If it was gravelly, those users would, for those type of things that have much smaller wheels, really would find it very difficult to use. So actually, it has a broader appeal because of that type of surfacing. Appreciate that's a slightly more harder type of surfacing, visually. It's not dissimilar, though, in form to the nearby skate park, which will have that kind of hard surface throughout. There are grassed areas in between, so it's not an exclusive area of hard surfacing throughout. It is going to result in some visual change to the immediate area. You can see that the earthworks are all built up to create some of the banks and the rollers. So that's not to negate that, but we are talking about a site that's within a very large area of existing green space, and those other pitches will remain and will therefore retain a significant degree of green space at the Sharpham site. So this will only affect a very modestly sized area of the overall provision. So whilst it's modest in size, so any visual harm that's going to arise is going to be relatively limited in scope, in our opinion, and it would also be, we would consider, significantly outweighed by the sporting and leisure benefits, the opportunity to improve healthy lifestyles that comes with a proposal of this nature. So overall, therefore, would be considered to be acceptable in design and visual impact terms. So just on to other matters. So we haven't had concerns raised by any other consultees or in representations regarding amenity or highways and parking. Natural England were satisfied with the ecological implications of the proposal and didn't consider that any conditions were necessary. Comment has been raised about the lease between Sedgemoor District Council and Cheddar about whether the proposal would breach that. Ultimately, that's a civil rather than a planning matter. We wouldn't get into the terms of a lease. Though I have had discussions with the relevant States Department within the council, who confirmed that any such proposal that's going to involve building on Sedgemoor's land that's leased out will require landowner's consent. They indicated it would be highly unlikely to be withheld. And then there were comments also submitted about accidents arising due to the proximity to the rugby ground nearby. So there is a 15-metre separation to the rugby pitch to the north. So that was a separation that was agreed between the applicants and the rugby club. So it's they went beyond what's called the dead ball zone immediately behind the goal, which understands to be about 10 metres and adds an extra 5 metres. So that was agreed with the club. Sporting England, were aware of that. They didn't consider there was going to be any operational difficulties arising from this proposal on the rugby club. The rugby club have written in support of the proposal, so it's not considered that's a matter which therefore would preclude granting of consent. So overall, just to sum up, proposal will increase recreational sporting provision in Cheddar. It's considered to be policy compliant, and therefore the recommendation is to grant permission. Thank you.
Members, as you'll see, we've got a number of speakers. The first speaker we're going to take actually is going to be Lynn Goodfellow from Cheddar Parish Council, who is joining us, I think, online. So again, Lynn, if you can bear with me, I'm going to hand over to you. If you can wait for 5 seconds.
Yes.
Try and make a start, and we'll chip in on you if we're not hearing you. So if you don't hear anything from us, hopefully it's good news. You've got the 3 minutes. I think if you can keep track of the 3 minutes at your end, I can't really give you the 1 minute warning as normal because of this give and take on the mics. So it'll be over to you for that, and I'll come in if you're over the 3 minutes. But start whenever you're ready, please, Lynn.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Chairman. Can you hear me? This is very echoey at my end. Can you hear me?
We can hear you, Lynn. Loud and clear this end.
Okay, so long as you can hear me, thank you. Cheddar Parish Council supports this application as it provides an additional recreational facility for the village. Shopham Road is our playing field area, and the pump track is located next to the very well used skate park. And I think that's good because it puts all the wheeled fun stuff in one corner of the field, and that actually makes other areas of the playing field much safer. It also means that people are not coming from other areas and cycling across pitches to get to this area. So by having everything in one corner that's wheeled straight off from the car park, to me seems to make sense because the cricket pitch won't get run over as people go there. So I think the whole thing's much safer. The difficulty of the Bristol water pipe has been addressed, and I heard Mr. Titchener raise that. I understand that our ward councillor has objected to this, and I do know why. It was a deep and meaningful discussion, but it's been touched on again that the building of any structures other than a pavilion, which is the lease agreement that was being referred to, and that this needs to be retained as a green area. Well, no, it won't be green in all parts. It will be green with some asphalt on it, but it doesn't affect any of the pitches. It really enhances the facilities in the village, and I think that that's a good definition of what is a recreational field, that it has a mixture. The site is much too small to ever be another regulated pitch. So it does enhance the area. It doesn't extend our playing fields, but it enhances the facilities, and it's on a patch of land. I can't see it being used for anything else. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The second speaker was Councillor Finner, and unfortunately he can't be with us, so we have Mr. Mulhewish to read out the statement. So again, Mr. Mulhewish, you know you've got 3 minutes, and you'll see the time in front of you.
Thank you very much, Chairman and members. This is a statement from the Ward Councillor, Councillor Paul Finneran. I would ask councillors deciding this application to ensure that they take into their considerations the fact that these playing fields are now unable to be extended due to the only available land having been built upon by the Bloor Homes development. This application before you will lead to an area equivalent to 2 tennis courts being lost from the Sharpham Road playing fields. This will thwart the long-term ambition SDC officers have held of realigning the current pitches to allow space to locate an additional pitch. This possibility was discussed as recently as April 2021. The case officer has stated in the DM committee report that my objection is not based on valid planning grounds. However, planning policies are legitimate planning grounds, and this application does appear to directly breach Cheddar Policy C8, which specifically comments at paragraph 5.144
There are opportunities to reposition existing pitches to make more efficient use of the area, particularly if the existing electricity transmission lines could be placed underground. I believe that this pump track facility could be better placed than this proposal presents, and request that the application be refused as being non-compliant on policy grounds. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And our third speaker that we have is Grant Gudge, who is the applicant. Again, Mr. Gudge, you'll have the 3 minutes. If when we hand over to you, if you just wait a few seconds for us to be able to get the mic switched over to you, so hopefully we can hear you. And if for any reason we can't hear you, we will chip in and let you know that we've got a problem. But start whenever you're ready.
Good morning, Chairman, councillors. Thanks for letting me speak in favour of this application. I'm chairman of Ride Mendips, which is a registered charity based in Cheddar. We see the pump track as an opportunity.
Sorry, can you stop? Sorry to stop you in your flow. We can't hear you this end, I'm afraid. Just bear with us again. We count you back in. Okay, apologies.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Right.
Good morning.
You're good to go.
Good morning, Chairman and Council. Thanks for letting me speak in favour of this application. I'm chairman of Ride Mendips, which is a registered charity based in Cheddar. We see the pump track as an opportunity to encourage toddlers, children, adults to get outside and enjoy healthy exercise within a short distance of the village for free. The project has received massive support from the local community with 2 very well attended fundraising events. It's received over 100 supportive comments for this application, including from the heads of all the local schools. It's received over 1,200 signatures on a petition to Cheddar Parish Council, and Ride Mendips have raised all the necessary funds for the track, totalling well over £100,000. The objections raised by Councillor Finneran have been addressed at previous parish council meetings, but I'll readdress them in this forum. The terms of the lease is the first thing around the green open playing spaces. And the lease agreement was actually prepared in 1988, and I'd say that was before skate parks and pump tracks were commonplace recreation facilities. And we believe that the intent behind the lease is to ensure that the area remains open for public sport and exercise. And with that in mind, the pump track fulfills that intent, particularly for children and young adults who don't participate in traditional team sports. The second is around the policies and the local plan. One of the objectives of the neighbourhood plan is stated as enhance the sports and recreation facilities to encourage sport and healthy living. And the plan also states that the parish council is working towards improving Sharpen Road sports facilities. There are plans to improve drainage, car parking, and possibly to enlarge the skate park, which is what this would do. The third, should this application be permitted, it would lead to the urbanisation of green open spaces by the building of tarmac roadways on the site. The pump track is not a roadway, it's not for powered vehicles, it's for bikes, scooters and skateboards, and the track is of very limited scale in the context of the playing fields, and it will be blended into the playing fields with green banks and green islands within the track. The fourth one is to do with its position between 2 rugby pitches and the danger of users being hit, and I think this has been addressed before. Sport England were consulted and see no concerns, and I've been in constant communication with the president and the chairman of the rugby club who see their grandchildren and children using the track and see it as a benefit. The fifth and final is around an alternative location. Well, Cheddar Parish Council debated 2 possible locations back in March of this year, and they voted to use the location set out in this plan. And the main reason for that is the proximity of the pump track to the existing skate park and to where a playground will be resited. And as a parent of 3 children, that makes complete sense because you'll be able to see all children at the same time if they're on different facilities. And in conclusion, I'd just like to restate the amount of support from villagers, the fit with the village plan, and the need I would impress for a conclusion today because funding deadlines will expire shortly. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, and that was spot on the 3 minutes, so thank you. Members, any comments or questions, please? We'll start with Councillor Scott and then Councillor Hendry.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Can't hear me.
I don't. Are you hearing anything?
Not very clear on
No.
the Teams.
Do you want to try again, Liz?
Yeah.
Has someone turned it off?
No.
Yes.
Yeah, it's on there.
That's on.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I'd like to support this because I think it is a sort of a useful facility for the locals. And as explained by the last speaker, there has been a lot of local support for it. And if the parish sort of supports this area, being next to the skate park, I can only see that's a good thing. With regard to the sort of visual impact, it will have an impact, I guess, because it is a flat field next to the raised banks of the reservoir. But if I could, maybe they could mitigate by planting a few trees that they could get from Sedgemoor later this year. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hendry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I quite like this from the outset, even before everybody started speaking, after I'd read through the notes prior. I do believe in local knowledge. The last speaker, very, very good, summed everything up, first class. I couldn't agree more with everything he said. Councillor Liz Scott, I agree with everything she said. No negative problems with it at all, and I think it's absolutely first class. Thank you.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Pearce and then Councillor Betty. So, not Councillor Pearce.
Can you hear me? Oh yeah, that's fine, isn't it? Yeah, if the parish council are happy, I'm happy. So if Councillor Hendry didn't second, I'm happy to second.
I'm not sure we've even been proposed as
Oh,
yet,
well,
so.
then I will propose. Sorry, I would propose the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Betty.
Thank you, Chairman. I don't have a problem with this. We have more sports in the Olympics with cycle, BMX in and that, and this will just enhance that, and hopefully we could maybe get an Olympic person training on there. So I'd happily second the recommendation.
Thank you. I'm not seeing any other comments. So we have a recommendation that's been moved and seconded to grant permission. All those in favour, please show. That's unanimous. Yeah, clearly carried. That's unanimously carried, so permission is granted. Okay, if members are happy, we'll take a short, again, 10-minute break. Okay, we'll start again at 10:02. Okay, right, members, if we can make a start again. It's 10:02, so we'll recommence. Members. Can we come to order? Thank you. Right, we'll restart. So we've got one more application to come to. We have the Parish of East Brent on page 85. And Mr. Evans, you're going to be presenting this again. Hopefully you've picked up on the protocol. You need to give us about 5 or 6 seconds after we hand over to you for your mic to be engaged, and we will let you know if we can't hear you. So handing over to you now. Thanks.
Am I coming through now? Yeah, okay, great. So this application is relating to the clock tower in East Brent. The application site is currently used as a business premises for a couple of businesses under the banner of Somerset Business Centre. The site itself is located on the west side of the village and is within proximity of the local school and church. The access to the site comes along this road here. And the application site we're discussing today is this area here, highlighted by the blue circle, the grey circle here. So the clock tower itself is located here, and as I said, is home to a couple of businesses that are looking for an expansion to their meeting room and groundsman's facilities. The application site here is the former car park of the old Rossholm School, which this building was part of before it was granted consent to change its use. The area is currently laid with loose stone and chippings and is surrounded by trees and hedgerows along its boundaries. The access is along this way here, which also serves a number of other properties, both the school church to the north and residential properties within proximity of the site. So the application is for the erection of a groundsman building indicated here, and a meeting room which would be used for meetings and training associated with the businesses that take place within the clock tower itself. These buildings will be single story in height, with pitched roofs, and will be finished in timber cladding and felt to the roof areas. The meeting room and the groundsman's rooms will basically be open spaces used primarily for meetings and training in terms of the meeting room, and the groundsman's will be used for the storage of implements and equipment used in the maintenance of the trees and grounds associated with the businesses. So the buildings themselves are fairly simple in terms of design and appearance. Internally, there will be no waste facilities provided, so no toilets or anything of that nature. There will be a reliance upon the existing buildings to the east of the site for daily function in terms of the needs of the people that will be coming to the site. But in effect, these rooms will provide more spacious and more airy environments within which people can get back to meeting face to face, as opposed to the current situation where a lot of meetings are taking place virtually, as is ours, and training is also done online. So the businesses are trying to get back into an area where they will be meeting face to face, and they require additional space within which to carry that out. This is the application site as viewed from the existing access gate. So as you can see, the site is fairly overgrown since its use has ceased as a car park. But the buildings themselves will be situated, one to the northern boundary of the site and one to the southern boundary. And as you can see, there's plenty of space within the site to accommodate the two buildings. This is a view from the access looking towards the south, just to give you an indication of the existing tree planting within proximity of the site. It's not felt that the buildings themselves will have any visual impact on the village or the surrounding area, given their tucked away location, as well as the surrounding screening that the boundaries currently have. This will remain unaffected by the development that's proposed now. And this is a further shot looking towards the west of the site and the again the tree planting within and beyond the application site. This is a view from within the site looking back towards the access road. There's a small minibus there, which is parked at the location of the clock tower itself, and this is where the existing business operates from. So there's a fairly short distance between the site and the existing premises. So there will be a functional need and a functional link between the two in terms of daily use. Beyond here is the existing school buildings and a pond, all of which will remain unaffected by the development. There will be no overlooking or overshadowing caused by the buildings, given their distance from existing residential properties. There's sufficient distance to enable the existing main residential amenity levels to be maintained. And again, a further shot of the existing landscaping. So as you can see, the buildings themselves will be screened very well from outside of the site. Vantage points from within the village will be limited, and it's only when you approach the site from the north that you will actually notice that they are there at all, to be honest. So it's considered that the scale and design of the buildings are appropriate for their function and the needs of the business. As I've mentioned, we have had an objection from the parish council regarding the application, and this is centered around the size of the buildings. I mean, going back to the plans themselves, it's not considered the buildings themselves are going to be massively out of scale with the needs of the business. The size in terms of the meeting room will be 10 meters by 5 meters, with the groundsman's building being approximately 7 meters by 4 meters. So more on the domestic side in terms of outbuildings, it's not considered that they will have a significant impact by virtue of their scale or visual appearance. With regards to disabled access, there will be a need to comply with Part M of the building regulations, and as you can see from the drawings, the application does not include any raised platforms or steps into the buildings. It'll all be level access into there, and the doors the access doors will be obviously needing to be compliant with the regulations as well. With regards to the treatment of foul sewage, there are no toilet facilities proposed within these buildings, so they will purely be used for meetings, and the existing facilities within the business itself will still need to be used for their daily needs. So in terms of the details regarding supply of water treatment, etc., it's not considered that there will be any significant impact on existing water quality in the area as a result of this development. The area itself is fairly porous in terms of the existing materials. This will be retained, so the roofs themselves will not result in a discharge of excessive surface water. This can be contained within the site, and as you can see from the area, there is quite a lot of green space that will be able to absorb any slight increase, but it's considered that given the size of the site and the small footprint of the buildings, there will not be any excessive surface water that would affect the amenity of nearby properties. So on the basis of the proposal submitted and the acceptability of the design scale and impact on the surrounding area, is considered the proposal for the two buildings is acceptable and is recommended for approval. Thank you.
Thank you. As you'll see, members, we go to the speaker on this one, Kevin Bray, if you'd like to come forward, Mr. Bray. And you're speaking on behalf of the Parish Council today. Excellent. Try again.
Hello?
Yes.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Start when you're ready.
The Parish Council reviewed the application and the documents and noted that the meeting room would be used on some occasions for activities of persons with learning disabilities. Nowhere in the application does it state that the facilities, i.e. toilets, etc., wouldn't be provided within these buildings and that applicants' activities would have to go back to the main house. It was therefore the Parish Council's view that if you complied with the current DDA Act 1995, 2005 and 2010, together with the building regulations, Part M 2010 Volume 2, you would require toilets within that space, especially within the meeting room. The gross external area is stated at the moment at 51 square metres. But if you look at a DDA compliant toilet, it's 3.3 square metres. The Parish Council's pure concern was when somebody starts to lay out the internal space for the meeting room, that it's found that it can't accommodate kitchens, places for hanging coats or compliant DDA toilets, and that the external envelope would grow, so the building would get larger. The other facility, which is the groundsman hut, that's actually a place of work, and under the place of work requirements, it would require a toilet facility and somewhere to make tea and coffee. So once again, that space could grow. The final comment on there was that Wessex Water have obviously said they've got no comment because there is no water supply and there's no sewage disposal. But if it's found that having compliance with the Workplace Act and DDA that it requires toilets, then Wessex Water would obviously have to re-comment. Our concern as the Parish Council was if this could be deferred and the applicant confirm that there are no requirements for toilets in there and that any use of that building will go back to the clock tower and that the footprints of these buildings will not increase, then that would be a different consideration for the Parish Council. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Mr. Evans, are you able to comment on the issues that have just been raised before I come to amendment?
Thank you, Chairman. Well, the information that we've been provided is that there was no need for the use of these buildings to have toilet facilities, and on the basis of the plans that we have in front of us, we have assessed the size and scale of the buildings on that basis. We obviously looked at the planning grounds and planning policies that we could in terms of the relevance to this scheme, and it was felt that this scheme complied with those. In terms of other regulations, I mean, you've touched upon the need for access, etc., but it's not something that's gone into great detail with regards to the planning application itself. We've assessed it on the basis of the needs that have been submitted by the applicant and made the recommendation on that basis.
I can just with officers as well that were the applicants to find that they required to have those facilities, then they would have to be coming back with another application, because that would be materially changing what they've got permission for. Mrs. De Vries, do you want to comment on that, to save it batting it in and out of the meeting?
Yeah, I think the concerns from the parish council were that if the footprint of the building had to increase to accommodate the additional facilities, so if the footprint of the building had to increase, that would have to come back to us as a new application, or an amendment of the approved plans of this application if it's for the same thing. So if they're having to extend the buildings beyond the footprint that you're currently looking at, then we would be seeing it again as an application.
Okay. Any comments or questions from, yes, I've got Councillor Facey and then Councillor Scott. All right, Councillor Scott and then Councillor Facey.
See if it works. Yeah. Yeah, thank you, Chairman. There's been no mention about parking provision. It just says that this will be built on the car park. I just wonder if that's a consideration, that there obviously is going to be more use, whether there is sufficient parking.
Okay, Mr. Evans, again, if you can give yourself the 5-second count in.
Thank you, Chairman. So in terms of the existing car parking area, I mean, there is quite a lot of ground still left within the existing parking area that was the former school car parking area. Based on the size of the buildings, it's not considered that the parking itself would be in excess of
First, would this building be inspected under building regulations, quality control?
Mrs. De Vries, do you want to take that one as a...
Yeah, I know there is a minimum footprint requirement for detached outbuildings for them to come under building regs. Offhand, I'm not sure what that cap is, but I would suspect it's of a footprint that would probably require building regs.
Yeah, thank you. So that would mean the physical visit of an officer to inspect. But that, I'm just sort of reassuring Mr. Bray, in case anything's done which they've not got permission for, that we'd be aware of it. That's my angle I'm coming from, Chairman.
Mr. Howlett, did you want to?
Well, I was only going to say that I don't think every building is inspected by under building regs, because you can apply for building notice, which doesn't necessarily need inspection. I don't think on small minor buildings. I think the footprint is 30 square metres. I think is coming to the top of my mind. I'm only supposing this in terms of when building regs kick in. So there will be a requirement to go through some building regulation application of some sort, but there are different degrees and factors in terms of the extent of an inspection and the assessment of the building inspector. I don't want people to think that an inspector will go out and visit every single building that's built. That's not always the case. There is like a building notice, which is quite a quick process. But I think in terms of this, I mean, this is where planning and building regs separate. We're not supposed to get involved with other legislation, so we're looking at the external part of the building, where it's going on the site, and the impacts that arise from that. In terms of the internal side of it, and it is normally picked up by building regs or through DDA or all those sort of requirements. It's not something that we would normally get involved with at this stage. It's not a matter for us to withdraw planning consent, because it's a further requirement that the applicant would need to address further on. So it's not really a consideration that we would hold much weight on in terms of this application.
It's basically the fact of looking at a double-barreled attempt. That if they are going to try some contrived building without regulations, we might have a way of having observations on it, Chairman. That's where I was coming from.
Yeah, understood.
Not being sort of devious myself at all.
Okay, any other comments or questions? Councillor Kingham?
I agree with the Parish Council. I think if you've got facilities for a workman, you do need to have facilities within that building. I mean, so you should have washing facilities and toilets. So them not showing it, I think, is
again, Mrs. DeVries, I mean, do you want to, ultimately, if this is changed and they do need those facilities, then it's back before us.
We would get it back if there's a change to the footprint.
Yeah.
If the footprint of the building stays the same and they end up having to incorporate facilities into the building, the internal incorporation of facilities wouldn't require consent from us. We did go back to them and ask whether there were going to be facilities given the points that were raised, and they've confirmed there aren't. So at the moment, the plan that's before members is 2 detached outbuildings, both of which are open plan with no facilities proposed. In the event that they have to incorporate water or waste treatment or anything like that, that's subject to separate controls which are outside of planning. But in the event that there isn't enough space in the building to do that and they need to increase the footprint, then it will come back to us.
Councillor Grimes.
Thank you, Chairman. The explanation of the... Can you hear me okay? Yep. With the explanation of the officer, I'm satisfied that this is okay. So I'd like to move the recommendation, please. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Scott. Seconded, Councillor Scott. Any further comments from members before we move to a vote? Okay, so the recommendation has been moved and seconded to grant permission. Those in favour, please show. Yeah, and those against, please show. And abstentions. Okay, so 11, 1 and 1. Yeah, so that is clearly carried. So permission is granted, 11 in favour, 1 abstention and 1 against. Right, members, that brings us to the end of the applications we have before us today. But if you can move in your papers to page, I believe it's 91. And Mrs. DeVries, I think you're going to take us through the reports.
I don't know if that's showing on Teams or not, but it's not on the right screen at the moment.
Oh. Yeah, but not the top of the sheet. But yes, that I'm seeing is everyone else seeing the documents? Yeah. Okay.
Okay, I think the documents are visible on Teams, but not in the meeting room, so apologies.
Okay.
This is just appeals received. So we've had 3 appeals received. One which is demolition of existing garages and erection of a dwelling, which was garages to the north of 35 Dunkery Road. It's delegated refusal. So they've come in to appeal for that. There were 2 dwellings. The address will be familiar to members because it's land west of the Firs, Woolrow Road. So members will be aware there was the application for about 46 dwellings off of Woolrow Road that was allowed at appeal. This was an extra 2 units that would have been accessed off of the same estate, but we recommended refusal on it. So it's been refused and it's currently with the planning inspectorate, but again, another delegated decision, but that might be why the address is familiar to members. And there was a retrospective application for change of use of the land for siting of 5 yurts and 5-metre wooden deck and retention of a field shelter at land adjacent Rackley Lane, Coulton Bishop, and that one's currently at appeal as well.
Any comments or questions? Yes, Councillor Kingham.
The Flower and Hayes site at Woolrow, they have actually started moving earth, so they've obviously started on site.
Yeah, they've submitted a lot of discharge of condition in connection with the appeal consent. So we have been discharging all the pre-commencement conditions and they have started work.
Okay. If there's no further comments on that report, we'll move to 6.2 on page 92.
Okay, so this is section 106 agreements that have gone out. So there's Brent House Farm, which was an outline application for the erection of an agricultural workers dwelling. So that was tying it to be an agricultural workers dwelling as part of the 106. That one's finally been issued. Lakeside, which was at committee, it was outlined for up to 110 dwellings. That one finally has gone out as well. And Brent House Farm, another application for agricultural workers dwelling. The two applications, it was two applications for the same site. So there was an outline consent and a detailed consent, and it's an either or on the consent. So the one legal agreement covers both the planning applications. And there was also a, I think it was a non-frag agreement for conversion of a detached double garage, which was consented as annex accommodation. But just to make sure it's not separated sublet or sublease separately from the main dwelling, it was considered worthy of a 106. That had a 106 agreement on it as well.
Okay, any questions or comments on those? Not seeing any, so that can take us over to 6.3 and the certificates of lawfulness.
This one was at the barn, which is Maunsell Road in North Newton, and it was a lawful development certificate for the existing use of the building as an independent dwelling. So they'd proved that they'd occupied it as a residential property for over 4 years, and it becomes lawful through passage of time.
And again, any questions? Nope. In which case, thank you very much, Mrs. De Vries. Thank you, members. That brings us to the end of today's agenda. So we'll close the meeting and thank you all very much for your attendance and decisions. Thank you.